Welcome back to Always a Bigger Fish, the show answering questions you didn't think to ask. Welcome back to our Fallen Order coverage, where last episode I lied to you and said we'd be covering Chapter 2. We're actually covering Chapter 2 and 3 because we cannot schedule our lives to save... To even make this recording happen, we had 2 reschedules and 1 drunken bender. So, just the fact that we're here at all, I think, is impressive. So we're covering Chapter 2 and 3. If you haven't played and you want to play, basically play the game up until Cal is knocked unconscious and finds himself trapped in unusual circumstances. If you want to play the game first, pause, play until you get knocked out, and then come back. But if you don't care about spoilers or you're not playing along, I guess we'll get stuck into it. I kind of want to know. So really, last time, very high level. The game's starting, you're just sort of getting a bit of an intuition of, I guess, how the game is going to feel moving forward. It's really introductory. This is kind of now just you're in the game, doing game stuff. Were you guys expecting as many puzzles as this game is obsessed with providing for some reason?
I don't think I was at all, except for the fact that you had mentioned it a couple times just in passing. Like, the number of times I heard you mention the word puzzle before we got started kind of clued me in that this was not the normal game I would have expected from Star Wars. But I haven't necessarily disliked anything. It just was really out of the realm of what I would have expected from a Star Wars game.
That's a good way of putting it.
Back when the game was new, a friend of mine was playing it, and I think I watched a little bit of him play that on, or streamed a little bit of it, and so I had a pretty good idea of what the game entailed, or what the game would be. That said, I hate it. I really hate this game.
Yeah, I thought you might. So
that's my high level overview right now.
So okay, so there's a few things I want to get out of the way first. So I also dislike big structural parts of this game. This is basically modeled on the Soulsborne series, so Dark Souls, Bloodborne, as far as like the combat. So it's kind of chasing Dark Souls in a certain sense. In a lot of ways, it's maybe closer to Bloodborne or Sekiro, where it's very parry based if you want to play it that way. Obviously the corpse run mechanic, where you have like check-in points that when you rest, the enemies respawn, and if you die, your force experience, they never really explain that, gets left in the world, right? That is just the Dark Souls formula. So that part of it I really like. Playing it on the hardest difficulty does really emphasize some of that stuff. I would anticipate that my playthrough of these sections probably took about a third of the time as you guys, if we exclude that one boss fight, only because I already know the answers to all the puzzles. So I've just, because I've played it a couple times, I just kind of come in, whiz through the puzzles, and then move on with my life. I don't have to think about it. I'm curious, I guess we'll get to it when we get to them, but what about it do you hate? Because for me, it's just, the puzzles are like, once you figure them out, it's like, oh yeah, but now I just have to do it, and it's like kind of sometimes tedious or annoying or unnecessary, and I kind of wish it didn't have them, is my kind of general thoughts on the puzzles.
Darth, I don't remember if you were positive or negative. Why don't you go first?
In regards to the puzzles, the biggest gripe, talking with some guys at work that have played through it, and what came out of that conversation was that the problem with the puzzles, in my opinion, is that they detract from the story by separating the story from the next bit of story. So you'll have this like huge bit of exposition where you'll learn something about the character or about the other characters in the story, and then you'll have this puzzle that you don't know how to solve. So you're going to spend 3 hours on the puzzle, then you're going to spend another hour or whatever trying to find your flippin' ship so that you could go on to the next bit of story. But by that point, it's been 3 solid hours of what was the last bit of story that I just learned, because I had all this puzzle stuff in between it. And then I had an hour of trying to find the ship and screaming at everything in frustration in between that. So the biggest problem I have is that I keep losing the point of the game, which is the story, in the midst of all this other stuff. So a huge thing that I think would have made the game better is to have, like in most games, I would think, I could say this with some certainty, that when you solve the biggest portion of it, you get to the climax of that level, and then your ship comes to you. So you don't lose everything that you learned, and you could just go to the next bit of story. So the story flow isn't as interrupted as this game like forces it to be. So that's my biggest thing. And then
the reason they do that is because they want you to use the new mechanic they've introduced at the end of the level, and it's like to get back, like, which I think it is a Dark Souls thing of like, it's sort of like a shortcut or whatever, or it's like a Metroidvania style thing. I just don't think it works here.
Because you could do the same thing by introducing the new mechanic in the beginning of the next level to force you to learn how to use it or whatever.
Which is what they do in the sequel. They figured that out. And
yeah, even then, right. The question was about the puzzles, and there are several of them. I don't know how I solved them. The first one where you're rolling the boulder around the room and you have to open the doors and let the wind push the boulder in certain directions, I solved it by accident. I don't know how I did it, and I couldn't duplicate it again. I was just like, oh, well, that's through that part works. Then. Yeah.
Interesting.
So were you're positive or negative on the game overall? Sounds like you're a bit negative on the puzzle.
Yeah, overall I am positive on it, even though like the actual play has been frustrating on several levels. But like I spent a lot of time in this game just looking around. Like I love the scenery. I love.
Isn't it crazy good looking?
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I love the mechanics of just like running around and slashing stuff. And I spent a lot of time like force pushing enemies off the edge of the cliff and then giggling and waiting for them to respawn and then doing it again.
It's pretty good.
So what you said right off the top was not what I was going to lead off with, but is 100% correct that was one of the major complaints that I was thinking about last night, because I didn't play the second half until last night, the chapter 3 part. Or actually, I didn't finish the second half of... I finished the second half of chapter 3 last night, or what we're talking about for chapter 3. And I was thinking exactly the same thing. I was like, what are we doing here? Or my friend that was watching me play, she's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I don't freaking know. Like, I don't remember. I don't even remember what we're looking for. And then it's like, you finally run into the hologram of the guy, and he's like, this, blah, 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 the Jedi children. I'm like, oh, yes, it's the Jedi children.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we're doing here. Or something. Unrelated, or an actually related point to that, I wanted to talk about at the end of today. So stick a pin in that. It's one of our phrases. T-shirts incoming, David.
I don't think that we invented that phrase. I don't know.
No, we didn't, but we use it a lot. Along it, like it's writ large. Put a pin in that, and there's a third one I don't remember, but it'll show up. It will be emergent. Yeah. So like the story disconnectedness, because of the amount of time it takes to get from cutscene or exposition, is it really ruins the pacing for the story as far as the storytelling goes. As far as the puzzles themselves, I think I'm having slightly an easier time of it because my friend and I, or my friend who was watching me, is like we play a lot of puzzle games. Like right now, we're in the middle of the last of the We Were Here games, which I don't know if you've played those. Those are, you play it with a partner, and right at the beginning of the game, like both of you get separated, and you have to solve puzzles to move forward. And usually it involves you can see part of the puzzle and they can see part of the puzzle, and you have to communicate in order to move forward and things like that. And a big part of that game is just you get to a new area, and like what is the puzzle is usually where you begin with, and that can be hard sometimes. So my brain's already like kind of attuned to that, but even then, I was really glad that my friend was watching me, my friend that I play the We Were Here games with, because she was like, oh, you need to do this, or you probably need to do that, or why don't you try this? And there were like the one that we did last night. I don't remember having trouble with the balls. No pun intended there. But like the part that like one of the parts that really messed me up last night was in the when you have to burn the chain and drop the thing. Like we'll come back to that.
Yeah,
but
put a pin in it. Okay.
Put a pin in it. But there was one other thing I wanted to say is the big problem that I have that is very much related to the you finish the level and you have to get back to the ship. That was a problem for me more than once in this section where at the end of Kashyyyk, and it was unclear what I was supposed to do. And I thought
it going up the lift?
Well, I went up. I think that was what happened. But I was in front of the mantis, and it was like, okay, the mantis isn't the objective. I need to go somewhere else, right? Like there was something we didn't do here. We're looking for something, and I go, and I think I'm at a certain point, and I'm looking at the map, and I'm like, I think we need to go this way. And she's like, I don't think you need to go that way. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure we need to go this way. And it's the part where you jump down into the lake by the Venator, and so I jump down, and then immediately it clicks. I'm like, this is not the way I was supposed to go. And now I have to go through the entire level to get back to the ship. And that really pissed me off.
Yeah.
But
if it makes you feel any better, Darth did DM me around the same time in the story and was like, I haven't been knocked out yet. What the fuck am I supposed to do?
Yeah, that's what she wanted to play. We were here forever last night. She's like, have you been knocked out yet? Are we there yet? Come on, get knocked out.
And it's so weird too, because like the story at the end of that Kashyyyk level, the dude is that I always blank on his name. The dude wearing all the armor.
Huh? Oh no.
Saw
Gerrera. Okay,
yeah.
we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. But anyway, so he's like, you go find Tarfor in the Darklands or whatever, and take this path, and that's how you find him. So, assumedly, that's the next bit of the story, but it's not. The next bit of the story is going to Zepho. So why did the character direct you here, but you're supposed to go here? It was very confusing.
Yeah. There was one other thing that I wanted to say about the formatting of the puzzles before David gets us back on track, and that's the just what we do here. The format of the levels is so again. I think it's really valuable to compare this to the We Were Here series, in that when you get to a new area or when you get to a new puzzle, you may have significant amount of confusion on what is the puzzle in that game. However, you know the area that you're operating in. Whereas with this, because like you basically have the whole level to play with, there were many points where I'm like, where the hell am I supposed to go? What is not what is the puzzle? Where is the puzzle? Like
yeah, where does it begin and end? Like
yeah.
And I think it's a real difficult level design challenge that they stumble with a lot, because sometimes you're like, oh well, if I go into the previous room that I'm in or the side room, is that still part of it? And there's even multiple. I've played this game like a few times now. There was two moments in these levels where I was like, do I need to go into that other room, or is the whole puzzle in this main chamber? And I think that seems like a pretty, I don't know. It's not great level design, but level design is also one of the hardest things. So I'm not trying to say I would know how to do it better, but yeah, I did have the same observation.
And like along those lines, I wanted to bring this up. So like this clip is from the end of the Kashyyyk level, where all you have to do is walk over these lines, and the elevator starts going up, and it takes you to the top of the thing where the whole like big battle is going on. But if you don't accidentally walk over those lines, you don't realize that's a lift. So then you just end up going in circles around the entire map over and over and over, trying to figure out where you're supposed to go, because I know you're supposed to be in this room and go somewhere, but there's a door on one side of the room, there's a door on the other side of the room, and there's nothing necessarily saying this is a lift until you learn, oh wait, I'm supposed to be looking at those lights on the floor, and if I see those lights on the floor, it means it's a lift.
So that section, I also got hung up there, where and that was another part where I redid a whole section of the level trying to figure out where the hell I was supposed to go, and I didn't realize that was a lift until I looked at the map, which is ass, and then it was very clear on the map that was a lift, but I'm like, where the hell is that? Because I was at that point in a different part of the level, and I was like, oh, that's in that room, and so there's definitely a lift there. And even then I went back, and I'm like, where the hell's the lift?
Ironically, they solve it later. It's the same design, but they just put railings on it. So when you walk up to it, you're like, oh, that's obviously a lift because it's got railings when you're using it. But that first lift, I don't know why, but that first lift, they don't have them.
No, because see, I think I have to subtract points for that because there's no railings in Star Wars. We don't do railings in Star Wars. It's not
Doesn't a
thing.
guy get pushed off the railing into the Death Star laser in A New Hope or whatever? Or Return or something? The guy that did the Wilhelm scream? Why am I blanking on his name? It's his cameo. He gets shoved off. There's definitely railings. Okay.
No, it's a joke from A New Hope where you have the guys that are in like the laser. It's Family Guy made fun of it, where in their episode Blue Harvest, where like they've got like the big tunnel with that the Death Star laser shoots down. You have a couple guys there on like a platform with no railing, and one of the in the Family Guy bit, the guy goes, he's like, yeah, well, I asked him if we could put some railings in here, and he said, well, we can't do that because then you guys would be leaning. I'm like, what are you talking about leaning?
It's pretty good. Yet another Star Wars meme I don't recognize. All
Look
right.
at you there.
Let's get on track. Let's at least try. Rye, are you on the doc? Do you want to read the summary for chapter 2 for us?
All right,
Oh,
the
no-
whole thing.
Okay, have Rye read it because I have no clue where it is right now.
All right. In chapter 2, the gang heads to Zepho on the hunt for the tomb Cordova pointed them to. We learn a few things along the way. First, that Siri was a
Sia.
seeker for the
You
Jedi.
guys,
Seer
come on. Sia.
Was a seeker for the
She's one
Jedi.
of the 5 characters. Sia.
Oh, that's who that is. Oh, okay. Was a sort of spiritual recruiter who roamed the galaxy to find Force-sensitive children to kidnap and indoctrinate into the monastic Jedi Order. What the fuck? Second, the Empire abandoned a mining operation on Zepho as their equipment couldn't handle the magnetic winds. While navigating the tomb, Cal sees a vision of his master, Jaro Tapal, and he recalls the ability to force push. This ability allows him to complete the temple and learn that they ought to seek out the Wookiee chieftain on Kashyyyk. Stopping point for those of you who progressed. Play until you've defeated a familiar enemy and return to the ship with a new destination.
Well, that was where we would have stopped if we weren't doing
That's
a
where we
double
would
bill.
have stopped, yes.
Yes. So I want to explain. You've stumbled backwards into a trick I've done. I don't think I've done it to Darth in a long time. But phrasing the summaries in such a way that make you go, wait, is that what happened? So I'll read that again just for anyone in the back. So Sia, you're on the ship. It's after the Jedi holocron with the Obi-Wan Kenobi cameo. And Sia goes, Cal's like, oh, they're having a little bit of a heart-to-heart, right? And she explains that she was a seeker for the Jedi Order. And on first blush, out of context, you go, okay, well, so she just goes around the galaxy and goes and brings Force-sensitive children back to the temple. But if you think about it, her job was to go around the galaxy, find people with the Force, kidnap them, and brainwash them into the Jedi Order. And when you frame it like that in the context of this story...
Fake news.
This story's interested in that line of thinking because you get this question of her lost apprentice, right? And then you get the question of like... I mean, this story is very interested in these questions of like master and student and sort of, I guess, like ignorance and knowledge. And I mean, we haven't really got to like, it hasn't got into the politics of it yet. It will later when it thinks about the Jedi Order. But I think it's noteworthy that Sia frames this as a very neutral activity. And Cal just kind of goes, oh, okay. Like he doesn't really react to it. It's not until and this is getting ahead of ourselves, we will talk about it this episode. It's not until we meet her apprentice, that suddenly puts that into a bit of context, and you go, oh, maybe like her cutting herself off from the Force wasn't the worst idea. Because look at the results of what. It's like we talk about a lot with the fall of the Jedi Order, right? Which is, well, look at the result of them existing as this kind of like monastic, race of warrior monks, who sort of, for the longest time, didn't intercede with like politics and just kind of let a fascist dictatorship kind of overthrow the galaxy. And it's like, yeah, like maybe they weren't the guys. And Cal is on this mission to go and find a holocron with the location of all of these kids. And so I don't think I think it's interesting and noteworthy that her job was to go find kids that had force sensitive powers. Like I don't think though, and that her apprentice is a large question in this story. Those things are definitely being placed in, you know, different schematic order in order to do stuff with later. But I wanted to bring that up because you guys are like, what the fuck is the story? And that's what I thought the show would be a really good mechanism for, is trying to work through what it is I think they're trying to do, and then whether or not that comes across or not. But first of all, did you guys note that?
No. Well, what you wrote here, or what the exposition of the story?
Did it click? Like when they're having that little conversation, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm a seeker" or whatever. Did it click that your mission is also to go find a holocron where all the kids are? Like those two things are in conversation with each other in some way.
Yeah, you're not saying that they actually like introduced, oh, you know, the Jedi might be evil because we're like low-key kidnapping kids. Like they didn't go that far. Like that's not what you're actually talking about, right?
I'm not saying the story doesn't say that.
Okay,
a character later on will say that. Like in chapter 3, like someone like
that's a question that's always been in Star Wars, and that's something that, you know, people have like kind of debated about for a long time. But I mean, I think the answer is probably more nuanced than that, because it's like structurally not different from the Xavier Institute. Like these people shouldn't be able to function normally in everyday life because they have this gift that they don't understand how to use. So if you leave them alone, would they actually be better off? Arguably not. They might get in more trouble. They might turn evil. They might use their powers in a way that is not beneficial to, you know, the rest of humanity or whatever. So, I mean, everyone for the most part would argue Xavier was doing the right thing and having the X-Mansion and training mutants and bringing them off the streets and all that. And like, is that really different than what the Jedi are doing? Maybe wait for the kids to get older so they can make up their own mind, because a lot of the time they're taking them when they're like 2 or 3 or whatever, and as long as the parents agree to it. The old books that I've been trying to get you to go through, David, one of them is actually kind of addresses this more, where this one Jedi Master that is like kind of off his rails a little bit with how he's really overemphasized how important he is, and he's like, the Jedi are the most important thing in the galaxy. We are taking your child. You cannot tell me no, because the Jedi are the most important thing to the galaxy, because our, you know, connection with the Force makes us that important. So they like head on address that, and what would happen if the Jedi did take the kids when the parents did not agree to it. But for the most part, that's not usually what happens. It's usually, you know, oh, it's an honor for our child to be a Jedi, to be trained in the Force, and to help other people.
And don't forget that in Episode 1, when they bring Anakin in, they say he's too old.
Yeah, and he's like 9 in that film. What? Actually, that's a really good point. I guess what's interesting to me about this, or the thread I want to try and pull on here, because Darth is circling around where my head's at here, is if you think about this story as Cal as a kid, so as a youngling, presumably taken at 4 or 5 or however old, is being trained by his master before the fall of the Senate and before the fall of the Jedi. The reason the Jedi fail is like obviously pretty multi-layered, but I mean at the big core of it is they conceal from the Senate that they've for the last couple years in the lead up to the events that we see on screen, that they're starting to lose their ability to see into the future because of the shadow of this evil Sith that, you know, is somewhere out there, right? They're losing some grip of whatever the value it was, or the power that they had, that they were able to bring to bear, that was able to help protect the Empire, help protect the Republic, and help keep it stable. And they lie about losing that power, and you get that through dialogue where I think it's a conversation between Yoda and Mace. I think it's in the second or third one, I can't remember, but basically where Mace is like, hey, like it might be time that we admit that we can't see the future anymore, because something's about to break bad, and if we're not honest here, this is going to be a problem. And the Jedi's biggest problem as this kind of structure, and part of the reason why it fails, is that they have all of this rhetoric that they indoctrinate their kids into, and then when the kids get old enough to realize and become Jedi Masters and join the Council, they realize the rhetoric is insufficient, and so they start not necessarily lying, but they start not following their own doctrine because they realize it's unsustainable. And that deception and that distance between the, I guess, like, rhetorical function of the Jedi and the things that they teach you about attachment and things like that is not reflected in the praxis of the Jedi Order in things like Padawans and Masters, right? Like, if you were truly a monastic order where you forsook attachment, you wouldn't have like a direct reporting line with your boss/dad. Like, and it's just interesting that Cal is kind of, he was on one side of that. Everything went wrong. The Jedi Order failed, and now he's in this position where the mentor figure he has is a character who was responsible for going, finding those kids, taking them from their homes, bringing them to the Order, indoctrinating them, and like, you know, at the end of this little segment, we get her explaining what happened to our apprentice, but we'll get there when we get there. But it's pretty early on. This is like hour 2 of the game or something. So I think it's kind of laying its chips on the table and being like, we are going to be thinking about this stuff. And because it's Star Wars, it fucking doesn't do anything with it, but it's at least in the story. And I think for me, that is the most interesting aspects of what this era affords us, aside from obviously just the fact that Andor exists, right? Outside of that, I think it's interesting that you have these characters that remember what it was like and are maybe starting to identify some of the faults and the flaws that were ever present in the Jedi that are now only visible because it's over. Anyway, that was my TED Talk. The next note I have in my notes is, oh my god, the windmill puzzles are so annoying. I suck at platforming. I'm so bad at platforming, it's not funny. That took me and I've done this a lot, but that took me way too long. I just kept like getting the angles or the timing wrong. My Cal was plummeting to his death a lot. Like, that boy died tons of times just from fall damage.
I'm still thinking about what you wrote here. How do you say her name?
Sia.
Seer? Seer was a seeker. Oh my god. That's
the word she uses.
It's a Star Wars name if there ever was one.
That is a Harry Potter name, sir.
No, well, it's not as bad as some of the Star Wars names. Like some Star Wars names are like really literal. Like the Sleaze Baggio from it's Attack of the Clones. The guy who like wants to sell Obi-Wan death sticks, his name is Sleaze Baggio.
That's rough. That's rough, man.
And then there's a Jedi who, I don't know how you pronounce this, but if you read it the way that it's written, it says his name is I'm gonna die.
Fucking hate.
I think it's like Imagundi or something like that, but it's like, if you read it, it's like I'm gonna die.
Thanks, George.
Yeah, but anyway, like the part of what you wrote here, like my first instinct on reading that is how you could, or basically spin that, you know, if you had, say, like, advance, even not like, no, I mean, yeah, you could technically do this, like, if you wanted to put it like sort of like real world terms, you could go like in the post Empire era, or even in the Empire era, and you go like, well, I don't, Luke Skywalker's like, well, who were the Jedi? Or, oh, those are these monastic guys that went around and they kidnapped kids. Like, yeah, you could very easily put that spin on it, and if it's all true from.
They tried to kill the Emperor. They tried to assassinate the Emperor and take over.
Yeah, if these guys had to go, they're a danger to the galaxy.
Yeah.
I could see that. That's a story that needs to be written right there for Star Wars on like that point of view, and not like Also, I was gonna save it to the end, but I think it's very relevant to the discussion that we're having right now. So I'm gonna tell you what it is, and then you can decide if you want to talk about it now or talk about it later. But Darth, you probably saw the big news for Star Wars this week.
Ooh, what was it?
It was a Dave Filoni quote. Dave Filoni is like the guy who's running the show for Star Wars right now.
Yeah, I know he got like promoted.
Yeah. So his quote that everybody's all in uproar about is essentially that everyone can become a Jedi. And they did that, and this is partly the explanation for like Sabine in the Ahsoka show, because I don't think she was ever force sensitive in the show, and then we come to Ahsoka, and she was Ahsoka's Padawan or trainee or whatever, apprentice, and she's got the force. So everybody's like, "What the fuck? That wasn't a thing. How does she have the? How is she like being trained as a Jedi?" And so his the gist of what he said is that everybody can become a Jedi, but it requires training, and then it's not as easy for it's not like I can give you the exact quote, but it's kind of long. But like it's basically everybody can become a Jedi. It's just that some people might have to work harder for it. And the counter to that is that in a galaxy of quadrillions of people, there's only 10,000 Jedi. At the height of the Jedi, there's only 10,000 of them. You know?
Well, David, do you want to get into this now, or do you want to pause it?
You want to put a pin in that?
Let me do some magic. So I want to thread this together because I do think that's really interesting, and I think the question of why is there only 10,000, and what does that mean for the Jedi, and why might they be creating barriers to entry is an interesting question, because it's classic Filoni. He probably said one thing and didn't quite say what he meant. He always does. He always says like the most basic version of the idea. I think that's interesting because Jedi is just a terminology that a particular institution developed that surrounds the rituals of that institution. In the same way that anyone can, in theory, become a quarterback, not everybody has the skills to be playing in the Super Bowl, right? And so it comes back to this question of like, well, when we say Jedi, what do we mean? And I think this question of who decides what a Jedi is in universe, I mean, I don't give a fuck about paratext and Dave Filoni in this context, but in universe, at any given point in time in history, who decides what Jedi means is contentious and will change over time, and is one of the most interesting parts of the kind of expanded universe that's happening, right? Because, there are multiple points throughout this sort of Star Wars timeline where, what it means is different. Even in the prequels, it changes, right? At the start of the prequels, they are kind of this almost apolitical appendage to the Republic, who seem to just get thrown by senators at problems to go and solve disputes, right? The way that Anakin talks about them is sort of like they're sort of like wandering Ronin who are sent to go solve problems, and they have impunity to do so, right? They sort of
I would
ordained,
like to interrupt
right?
you.
Yes.
Because the path that I think you're going down sounds very much about it sounds very much about semantics and titles and what is a Jedi, and I think the more important discussion is everyone can become a Jedi in the sense of everyone can do what a Jedi does, and I think that is the problematic part, not that everyone can become a Jedi, because if that were true, if you want to extrapolate that, I think. And I haven't thought very much about this, but if you want to run that as a thought experiment on the concept of everyone has access to the Force and everyone can become a Jedi, that's
not where I was going with it. I was going to ask the question:
okay,
is the Force as a concept, is that necessary, or is that a thing that the Jedi have gone, okay, this is how we recruit NBA All-Stars, right? Is if they have this juice in their blood, we know that they're going to be getting more boards. They're going to be shooting threes. They're 6'7". They've got it like that. They have that natural talent that we're looking for, that we know will shape and get us much better results. Or is it necessary to be a Jedi, to have the Force? Because I think that's interesting. I think if Filoni's point is, well, anyone can do what the Jedi do, then the question becomes, well, yeah, but like, I can do what LeBron does, but but like I've got like a 0.01% of his skill set, talent, dedication, and practice. Like I can shoot a basketball, so in that sense, I can do what LeBron does, but mine isn't going in the fucking hoop. And so like, I guess the question then is like, well, what does that mean? And that's what I think is interesting. That's kind of why I was trying to connect that to this question of like, well, throughout Star Wars history, who was making that distinction at any given time? You know what I mean?
To stick with the sports analogy, I think this is where it gets, where that kind of idea of everyone can tap into this sort of thing is problematic. Is that or why that's problematic is that I was, when you were talking about LeBron, I was thinking about, there was this quarterback at one of the football teams that I used to follow who was like incredibly talented, could like heave the football like way down the field or whatever. And that's just an innate talent that they had. And their career went nowhere because they didn't work hard. But they had that innate talent to like really heave the ball. So like I could go out there and I could throw the ball. Not that well. If I practiced, I could probably get pretty good. But I think where this analogy breaks down is the full explanation of the sports analogy is the ability to throw the football at all. So I think that's
right.
That's what it is. It's like you can have people that throw the football who are really good at throwing the football, and you have people that have to maybe work hard to throw the football, but not everyone can throw the football.
Yes.
Is where I think Star Wars used to be. Now with this, it says that anybody can walk onto the field, pick up a football, and as long as they work hard, they can throw it. Now now go back to what I was saying. Like if you extrapolate that out, the problem is that the Force, or the way that the Force has been defined for a very long time, is that the dark side is the easy path. So anybody, like if anybody has access to that, that's very problematic. There should be Darksiders everywhere. Does that not make sense?
Right. It does, but then the question is, well, why isn't there? And the answer is because
not everyone can become a Jedi is the answer to that.
Well, or is the more interesting answer that the Jedi Order are basically like, they're a bunch of people that believe in God, but they don't, and they have a Satan myth, which is the Sith, but they don't even talk about it. They're so afraid of the Sith by the time that we get to the prequels that normal people don't even know that is a possibility. They don't know that there's an alternative to being a Jedi. And they don't want to publicize that. They don't want people to be even conscious of that in any kind of capacity, because that risks someone realizing they're Force sensitive and going down the route of using it for things which the Jedi would deem to be evil, right? Or deem to be dark-sided or what have you. Which clearly, phenomenologically, in the universe is a thing because it gives you yellow eyes, and I guess that's how you know someone's evil. But that's like an interesting question. It's like, well, why aren't there? And this is where my instincts as someone that is interested in stories and politics and how those big moving pieces shape each other, and the fact that it has a bunch of fans, that's the bit where I struggle, where I'm like, it would be interesting to explore these questions. Do I think Filoni has the chops to do it? Is it something I could see a writer making really interesting and exploring? Yeah, like I think that's interesting, because the answer might be no, not everyone could do it. And then whose political project is it within the universe to start training people to throw footballs who have no business throwing footballs? Like, those are interesting stories that I would want to think about and see. But I guess conceptually, I understand what you're saying. Like, it does break down at that juncture, but that's a really interesting kind of lever to pull on and think about. Alternatively, and this is my deepest concern, is Filoni going, oh, what if Mando, lightsaber, fuck yeah, coolest OC of all time, give that man a laser sword. But do you see what I'm saying? Like, I don't disagree. I just think they're interesting questions to raise in the universe and explore, right?
No, but see, I think the problem with this is that is not the route that he took to get to this. Is that this is not the question of can anyone become, or can anyone become a Jedi? This is the answer to how the hell can she become a Jedi?
Okay, so that was the context.
Yeah, it's an answer to a question that was created, because it's like, I'm trying to think of like, well, so you said well, if or I said if you extrapolate this, then there should be Darksiders everywhere, and you said, okay, well, that raises the question of, well, why aren't there? And the easiest answer to that is because this is not true. And so, like, if you want to apply this to a different situation, you have in the Last Jedi the hyperspace ram, and that why has nobody ever done that before? Is the easiest answer to that is because it doesn't work. And then the problem with doing that then becomes, well, if that works, well, why don't we do it all the time? And that's a whole separate thing that we could get into when you tell us eventually why The Last Jedi is good.
Yeah, I will eventually convince you. I guess one thing I would say, because I don't disagree, I think you could thread the needle on both. So in my usual contrarian bullshit, I did have a thought, which is, I'm going to borrow from my boy Lil Dicky here a little bit. Imagine instead of, if we go back to the sports metaphor, imagine instead of, okay, he's not saying that anyone can throw a football. What he's saying is, what if Russell Westbrook grew up on a farm and never touched a basketball until he was 25, and then suddenly realized it was what he was born to do and was dropping dunks on everybody and was getting drafted and got into the league and with dedication and focus caught up to his peers? That's probably more likely what he... If I was being generous and trying to make this make the most sense, that is probably how I would thread the needle. Isn't that any kid could...
I don't think so. Because that's the story of Luke Skywalker right there.
Yes. Oh, literally it is. Fuck. Yeah, I didn't...
All right. Sorry to get us way off track.
No.
Where were we?
I can segue. It's fine. I know how these were going to connect anyway. I want to read you the fuck it. No, this is the Star Wars. No, I'm going to go to Wikipedia. I was going to use the Star Wars fandom.com, but apparently Wikipedia is the preferred resource. So this is what I think is interesting, is I think Seer is being a little bit deceptive when she tells Cal... I'll read you this and I'll tell you what she says. So it says, Jedi Seekers were members of the Jedi Order who traveled throughout the galaxy, assisting those who needed help and fighting the dark side when they found it. Seekers occasionally discovered new Force techniques and Force sensitives who needed training. Specializations of the Seeker included Ataru, the Jedi Hunter, and the Jedi Pathfinder. So they kind of have a amorphous role here. I guess Wandering Ronin is like the closest that we might think about it. But the way that Seer frames it is she was explicitly doing it to find new recruits, which is interesting. So was she like a subcategory whose only job was to go kidnap Force-sensitive kids, or is she being a little bit misleading about her role and what she did, and trying to maybe engender a bit of Cal's trust here by not giving him the whole truth? Darth looks deep in thought.
Well, I'm a little deeply confused.
Yeah, I'm also a little confused because I mean, essentially, it doesn't feel like there's anything, any subterfuge, any hidden motive other than we're going off and we're gonna find kids and we're gonna make them Jedi.
Yeah, that's all I took from when she told that little story in the game.
So at the end of this level, I'm not trying to, like, I'm not saying that she's like, I'm not saying there's any subterfuge here. I'm saying, like, she tells him one thing, and then by the end of this playthrough, like by the end of chapter 3, we kind of know that she was doing something slightly different. So I don't think she's like actively lying. I think it's just interesting that throughout this game, Cal is constantly learning more stuff about Seer that she could have just told him, like, to get him to trust her. but she can't do it because she's cut herself off from the Force and she's worried about hurting him, etc., etc. Like, it's just good character work.
Well, the only thing new that we learn, also at this point, we don't know that we could trust, because everything that we are told by the apprentice could straight up be a lie, because that's what evil characters do. And he hasn't had another conversation with Seer after that, I don't remember, about the
Not
apprentice.
yet, because he gets knocked out before he can.
So, I'm not really sure what he might have learned from the apprentice that would, like, recontextualize anything that he had already heard from Seer.
Well, I mean, the thing that she says, I guess we're not going to till chapter 3, but the thing that Seer reveals at the end of this little section. So you, I guess to paint a picture, so you go through this level. It's really cool looking. You kill a bunch of stormtroopers. You kind of keep working your way through, and Cal kind of has a flashback with Jaro Tapal, his master, where he remembers how to do force push. So this game has like a doubling thing where Cal has a flashback to when he first learned how to do it as a Padawan, and then that reconnects him with that memory in the present, which means that you can use that power in the game. Jaro
like
Tapal
that,
sort of
by the way.
It's cool.
I was about to say I hate that.
Really?
Mike, good. Say more, Darth.
Okay, so from like the game's perspective, I can appreciate it. I can really appreciate the way that they built it, so that, I had this knowledge, I learned this as a child, but I have forgotten it over the years. Now I'm relearning it, and now my character has these new abilities unlocked. Like, okay, that's cool, but like from a like realistic perspective, I just hate the idea that you would forget a skill that you had learned, because, and maybe that's just a me thing, but like I have a very good tactile memory. There's probably a better, more appropriate word for that. But like at one point I showed y'all the footage, like I learned the Maul Obi fight, and I still remember the swings. Like the first one is this, the second one is this, the third one is this, and like those motions are ingrained in my muscle memory. And the same thing would be this with skills that you learn that especially utilize the Force, which doesn't go away, which I still argue you can't disconnect from, because it's your life essence and you cannot disconnect from your life essence. So how could you forget to use something that is so ingrained literally in you? So I understand like why they did it from the game's perspective, but I hate the idea that you would forget how to do something that you've already learned. That's a physical skill. Like,
but it's not a physical skill. It's not a physical skill, though. He remembers... No, because he remembers the physical skills. He can do the lightsaber fighting. He remembers the gestures. He just has that trauma that's blocking him from that spiritual connection.
So it's not in universe. It's not a new concept at all, and it's. I mean, I think Darth raises an interesting point in the exactly how does that work? Where, like, is again like what Luke did in The Last Jedi and what Seer did with I've cut myself off from the Force. I'm like, okay, how does that work? I mean, you can say that, and we can accept that as a story mechanic, but then. If you think about how does that really work? It's weird, and I think until you said the word trauma, I'm like, okay, well I think that jives a lot more with, I would say, something we could say, okay, that makes sense. Where instead of going, because it was baby Grogu who was like. She says when they meet with Ahsoka the first time, it's like, he's been in hiding so long. Like, he has these powers, he can do these things, but he's been in hiding so long and attempting to fly under the radar for so long that it's gonna take some work to bring this stuff out of him again. And that's kind of what I was thinking with Cal. But if you said trauma, then you basically have to think about sort of like a mental break, where this part of whatever is being sort of sectioned off, and so the stuff it's still there. Your ability to do it is still there. That You just have to like remove that block, and then you can do it again. So I think that's what I think that's the disconnect that we have with what Darth is talking about. Like, he hasn't forgotten these things, but he's there is some sort of mental block there, either because he was hiding or because of trauma, like David said. That
both presumably, right?
Both.
Because he knows using his powers as the Seekers. What are they? The bad guy, the Inquisitors. They'll come and find you and they'll kill you, right? Like, it's you can't. So it's like he's terrified of using them, but also there's that. I suspect if your entire religious sect is slaughtered when you're 10, that could fuck you up a little bit. You may not want to pray anytime soon if praying is the thing that might get you killed, right? Yeah. Like, I think it's compounded. But I'm interested, Darth, what you think of that or if that works at all for you.
The comparison that makes the most sense to me in this discussion is Green Lantern, because this whole thing would make way more sense if it was Green Lantern had gone through so much trauma that he no longer had the literal willpower to make the ring work. Like, that jives. I get that, and I agree with that, because that fits that character and how the power works for that character, where if you don't have the right mental connection, then you can't do it. Whereas historically in Star Wars, it's just been learn the skill, and they treat the Force like using each different Force ability is a learned physical skill. That's for the most part how they treat it, and it's not. Sometimes it's you have to be in a calm state so that you could do it. I guess that's actually really ingrained with the trained skill. But anyway,
another relevant moment is in the Obi-Wan show, when he has also sort of like cut himself off from the Force. And it's not until Leia falls off the roof that he removes that mental block and catches her. But it's not an easy thing for him to do. Do you remember that moment?
And he's at the height, and he's a Jedi at the height of his powers. Like, he's fought in the big, like, he is at that moment, he is at his peak of, in theory, that's, LeBron at 30, right? Like, that's the peak of his, I mean, he's 38 and he's still doing records and shit, but like, he's at the peak, he's at the height of his powers, and he's not using them, and he's suffered this huge trauma, and he can't,
I would go further and say he's actively suppressing them.
Yes. Which, I mean, Cal's doing the same thing. I mean, that's kind of what's interesting about Jedi in this period of time, the ones that survived, is like, do you follow the teachings of the Jedi Order and fight the Empire and do a Luke, right? I mean, or not directly, but you know what I mean? Like, do you go out there and be a hero and try and fight back, or do you give in to that and suppress it and hide it and try and survive until there's some semblance of some rebellion or something like that?
And we saw it again at the beginning of the Obi-Wan show, the Jedi that chose to not do that, or to not hide, and he ended up dead.
Yeah, they'll get you. I mean, if the right-hand man of the fascist dictator develops a secret police squad exclusively to come find and kill your people of your religious sect, you might maybe not pray when other people are around, is a possibility.
All right, where are we right now?
Okay, so we're about to. Well, we do the you have the flashback. Jar Tapul has this really good quote where he says, "The obstacles in your path become your path," which is just good Jedi shit. I love when they say stuff like that. And then we get this direction to go to Kashyyyk, and we come back and there's a big AT-AT that is a boss battle. It's a very cool boss battle. Did you guys have any trouble with this stuff? How did you find it?
Forgot. I would like to go first. Before you get there, is so on Zepho there is this big underground cavern with lots of like different ice paths and elevators and stuff where you can get like all
Yeah.
over the place. So this was sort of the defining moment of the game for me when we got there like the first time. This is like I went down and I meditated, and then there's a platform there's a ramp and a platform immediately to your left with a big ice wall, and a big monster comes through that, and you have to fight him. And I died so many times to that thing. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take the difficulty down a notch. And I did that. And then I died a bit more, but I managed to beat him. And then I went to one of the paths, and like one of those rams knocked me off and killed me, and I wake up back at the thing, and the monster busts through the wall again. I'm just like sitting there like looking at it for a minute like. And then I went, huh. I wonder. And I just ran past him. And I ran past everybody else. And I just when I did, like, I ran down the pass, and like the ram's like fuck you, and I'm like peace, and I jump on the wall running thing, and then I basically just ran through everybody. And this reminded me very much of an epic NPC man skit that they did about Dark Souls, where you have the guy playing the game, and you have the guy who's like really good that like comes into his game, and he goes, just run through them. It's like you don't. Yeah. There's like 20 guys in front of him. He's like, just run past them. Doesn't matter, and just like go right, go right, go left, go right.
It's always
go left,
an option.
Whatever. And then you get to the end, and there's like the two guys, one of which has a like the double vibro blades or whatever, and I died there a bunch of times. And then I was just like, at that point, I was just like, forget it. I'm done with this game. I hate this game. And I went to story mode. And like you could sit there for 5 minutes in story mode with the big monster and him wailing on you before you died.
Nice.
And that's where I'm at right now in this game. I don't care about the combat. I'm just like running. I hate the combat, and I'm just like running through things. And it took me forever to get out of that cavern to figure out where the hell I was supposed to go. And
it's very confusing.
Yeah, I was like, so I hated that whole segment. And then having to go back and redo it all again, I'm like, no.
I was gonna say we're going back there later.
I'm looking for clips of that thing.
Yeah, I think that's. I want to say that I think that's bad game design. That like it's all just skippable.
Well, the idea. This isn't necessarily how you have to play it. The idea is that you play it the first time, struggle a bit. You come back later when you're a bit stronger, and you've already kind of mastered the existing sections. And so, like, what they're trying to do, and this isn't going to work for everybody, right? What they're trying to do is, like, engender this attitude of, okay, well, if I just mastered this section to get to the next meditation point, when I inevitably come back here, I will have, like, I'll still remember how to kind of do most of it, or it'll be a bit easier because I'm stronger anyway. Like, it's sort of it's like the Dark Souls formula, and if you hate it, that's totally valid. It's literally very contentious.
Right. What I'm getting at is, like, you know, when we get back to Zepho later on, fast forward to chapter 3 of what we're talking about today, is I did what I did before, and I just ran past everybody.
Yeah. See, you can't do that on the difficulty I'm on, because like 2 blaster bolts and you're dead. So it really is just like the slider. I mean, the difficulty slider exists so you can do that. So that you can just kind of barrel through and get the story. Like, I think that's good game design. That's an option. In Dark Souls, you can't do that in a lot of places. You'll just get spanked and die. Or it's specifically designed to not let you do that. So I think it's a choice they've made. Whether it's a good choice or not, I don't know. I think it is, but...
Well, I hated it. That whole section, I hated it. And then by the time, so I was in story mode when I got up to the ATST, and so that was just fun.
Yeah, that I was stuck on that for like 2 hours. That boss fight fucking sucks on the hardest difficulty, because he does this thing. Because the pattern that you have to do is you have to deflect the blaster bolts as he's shooting you, and then you have to force push the mines toward him. There's this really fucking annoying thing that kept happening to me where I'd go to force push them, and as I went to force push them, I was like a half a second too late, and so the nearest one would, as I pushed them, hit something else and explode and kill me, because one of them would kill me, And so I just got stuck in this infinite loop of trying to kill this fucking thing. But yeah, I don't know, Darth. What was what was your experience at this level?
It wasn't that bad. Again, most of it was either being lost or getting stuck in areas that weren't puzzles but were puzzles to me. Like you'll spend forever trying to figure out how do I get through this little maze, and then there was a door there the whole time, that kind of stuff. And I will say that I got much better at reading the map by the end of it, because I was like, okay, it's not as useless as I originally thought. Like, the map is filling in as I progress. And,
It's still pretty bad though.
Yeah. And then this, let's see, yeah, beginning of chapter 2 was when I discovered what you were talking about with the ponchos, and I was like, oh wait, I could put these things on that I've been picking up the whole time. So yeah, I
had a bit of a fashion. Yeah,
yeah,
fashion moment.
I spent a good 10 minutes just like scrolling through all the stuff I had in my inventory and changing the skins and you know, customizing my lightsaber and all this kind of stuff.
That's what I was gonna ask. I suppose you don't have a lot of components yet, but what? I mean, at this stage, you'd only have 2 colors, right? Blue and green, and then only the components you picked up, right? So it's pretty limited so far.
Mine is completely gold or brass, whatever.
Nice.
Whatever. It's gold. I think it's gold. It looks gold.
There'll be a point later where you get a ton of stuff. Do whatever you want with it.
I blinged out my lightsaber. I'm not rocking a poncho. I'm rocking the straight up jacket.
Yeah, I did not like the poncho look.
Interesting, because I vibe the poncho. That's my look. I like the poncho. The yeah, we will get pretty soon. We're gonna get a lot more options for customizing the lightsaber, and you can just go hog wild. They're like, oh, you just want all the components and all the colors? Fucking, oh, here you go. It's great. Okay, well, that's good. I don't really have a lot else to say on chapter 2. I mean, yeah, I think that level, it's not, especially when you get underground, like Rai's saying, I don't think it's particularly clear where you need to go. One thing that we've already talked about that I don't want to labor on because we talked about it last time we recorded, but like, how old are these recordings from this old dude, right? Like this Cordova dude. The story makes it seem like it's sort of framed as him going to all of these like ancient tombs and stuff, but like they have to be fairly recent recordings because he's talking about like the Empire and stuff like that. So like, are we just 10 minutes behind this guy at all times, or did he do this like last year? And that never will become clear in this game. The next game is like, oh, we have an answer for that, but I just think it's a weird choice. And even the fact that he's like, oh yeah, the homie Tuffle is on Kashyyyk, and it's like, but that was how is that still true when you recorded this, or did people move planets sometimes? Like it's just like, weird.
It's like the clip from the clip from Major League. This guy's dead.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway, I just think it's fucking weird.
The ultimate, I mean, what you said there, like people change planets or whatever. Like the ultimate MacGuffin is this holocron full of kids. I'm like, kids are not fixed points in space and time. You know? Like people move.
Yeah. Especially under the Empire. Imagine like, you know, they're going and they're taking these planets and they're colonizing them and building factories and stuff. There's gonna be a lot of displacement, refugees and stuff, right?
Yeah, who knows where these kids are? And then the other question of how old is this thing is how old are these kids now? Because like if this was like years ago, maybe they're too old to be Jedi now.
The other question is how long after the events does this story take place? Like the events of the prequels. Let me see if I can give you an answer. How long after Revenge of the Sith?
Let's say Jedi Fallen Order BBY.
5 years after Revenge of the Sith.
Oh wow.
So soon.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So
this is 15 years before A New Hope ish, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it 18 years or 20 years between Revenge of the Sith and let's see. Because everything's measured in
y'all are asking the wrong person.
Well, the everything's measured in BBY.
Yeah. Which is interesting because, okay, yeah, so Rogue One is 5. Okay, so it's 20 years because
19
Andor is set.
19
Andor's 14 years after. Yeah, 14 years after Revenge. Rogue One is one. It's 1 year before, or it's the same year as A New Hope. So yeah, 20 years between. So pretty immediately afterwards, I guess is the thing, which kind of makes sense. But yeah, still, like, where them kids at? They're not gonna sit still. It's wild. Anyhow, yeah. So basically, we get pointed to Kashyyyk. I mean, if we'd known it was a Wookiee, that's the first place I would have checked. Like, I don't know if that might be Wookiee racist, but like, that's where they live. That's the first place I'd check. It's just funny that that's like a plot thread that you have to tease out. Like, man, where could this Wookiee be? This Wookiee chieftain in the Wookiee army, where could he be at? It's like, yeah, fucking Kashyyyk. Anyway, I just thought, yeah, that's cinema sin shit right there. But it is just, this game insists on this plot, and then yeah, it strains credulity at times that this is even like why doesn't Cordova just go and do all this himself? He's clearly a Jedi Master, and he doesn't seem that old. And that, which then just raises more questions. I think there's like it just needed half a line of dialogue, some kind of throwaway of Cordova explaining why he's done this. Like, he says, oh, I need to make sure that there's a Jedi worthy of the holocron or whatever. But like, he needs to have some kind of logistical reason why he hasn't just opened the holocron and is recruiting these kids. And I think that's where I struggle. Is like, the story just needs a throwaway lampshade something. I just need to hang that concept on a lampshade of some description. And we just
remind me of the knife from Rise of Skywalker, where I was thinking, like, so he made this knife to say that real quick, I want to say that I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, how do you improve? What different ways to? What's the smallest change that you make to improve that? Is to let us know that little slide out thing is there. Yes. This related to my idea on Star Wars does puzzles wrong, in movies, because like remember I was complaining about the beginning of Ahsoka, I think, and the puzzles there. It's the same idea. It's not, if she holds up the knife and goes, you're sitting there in the audience going, pull the thing out, but we don't know that there's a thing to pull out. So she does that, and you have the question in my mind then becomes, well, why did he make that knife? Why didn't he just go get the thing? And again, like, there's like 100. I mean, you guys did what was it? What do you call that series? That one scene.
That one scene.
Did you do that one scene about that whole thing? So you've talked this one to death. But yeah, why did he make the knife? Why not just go get the thing?
It's absurd. And then that we also ended up talking about the fact that, like, how did the Death Star remains get there? And then when Darth told me about, like, what was it, like the hyperspace shattering or something, and wherever this goes up, I'll insert the clip. But there's a moment where you explain that to me, and I think you can see me get physically angry. Like, it's just so stupid.
I don't remember if I told you guys, one of the videos that I was working on or scripts I was working on at one time, I couldn't find the math or a source of authority to actually go through with it. But I was thinking, I was sort of, again, applying stuff in my mind. I was like, okay, the planet is this big, and she can see the entirety of the outer ring of the Death Star laser, which is something like 50 kilometers big in diameter, meaning this structure that she's looking at is sticking into outer space. Like, you could see this thing from space. Mm-hmm. And from where she's looking at it on the shore, based on the perspective that she is, because this thing is so big, this thing that she's looking at is like 100 kilometers away from her on the shoreline.
Yeah, did not need... Yeah, also, A, a really long way. B, didn't need the compass or protractor to find it. You could have just looked at the planet. And C, it's in the throne room. Like, I'm getting mad about this again. Like, it's the first place you check. You check for the Emperor's secret stash of weed in the throne room. It's the first place you'd look. The fact that you need a mystical fucking protractor to point at it is patently absurd.
Well,
But
she needed to know where she needed the protractor to show her where it was, because it's just a heap of junk, right?
Yeah, because it's a heap of junk. Why would you develop... anyway, it just... It's a fucking bad film. We can't, because we could talk about that for literally
Sorry
2
about
hours.
that.
But yes,
Way
I
off
agree.
track there. My bad.
I agree. Look, let's get into chapter 3. This season of Daredevil in the Details is brought to you by the Maynard Trigg series. These are my Dying Earth science fantasy steampunk coming of age novels. The 3rd book is out now. You can grab the 1st book, Maynard Trigg and the Creature Beneath the Veil, hardback or paperback. It's on special right now at underink.press. Appreciate any support you guys give. These books are one of my favorite things I've ever done. I'm super proud of them, and I would love you guys to check it out. If you're interested in the stuff we do, I guarantee you'll enjoy these books. Head to underink.press and grab your copy today. Ryan, do you want to read the summary for us, please?
All right. Chapter 3. Amid the Empire's assault on Kashyyyk, Cal drops in from above and sneaks his way aboard a walker, which was awesome. After fighting through the Empire, Cal meets Saw Gerrera, leader of the Partisans. Saw hasn't seen Tarful, the Wookiee, but suggests freeing nearby Wookiees might lead to the information you need. It is unclear if this is true or not, and Grease suspects Saw might be playing you. Cal fights a giant spider, which I hated. That was scary as fuck. And a bunch of stormtroopers. Relinks up with Saw, fights a bunch more stormtroopers, and frees the Wookiees. With your help, the Partisans are victorious, but you guessed it, your Wookiee is in another castle. A Wookiee leader, Choisik, says she'll reach out to Tarful. In the meantime, you head back to Zepho. I'm going to stop my summary there. We'll talk about Kashyyyk, and then I'll read the part before we go to Zepho.
Yeah. Well, that's technically part 2. So let me just quickly...
Chapter
and
3,
for some reason, the wikis I've been using to structure this are really adamant that there's a Chapter 3 Part 1 and Chapter 3 Part 2. Let's talk about Kashyyyk. So, we join y'all this intro sequence where you jump out of the plane into the ocean that's like shallow enough that this walker is like approaching shore. And I'll paint a picture for you. I'm sure I'll put visuals on the screen. But if you're just listening, there's this walker, and it's clearly been in this environment for some time. It's covered in like moss and creeping vines, and Cal swims up to it, and he climbs up the vines and the moss that have overgrown onto this walker and infiltrates it, kills everyone in it, and takes it over. And then you just go on this rampage. There you go. Darth has got it. It is, and like the mist that kind of sits over the water. It's just like, it is a spectacular sequence.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love this
cool.
whole segment.
Yeah,
I just wish the game was more of this. Like, the game at its best is doing these set pieces. And when it gets them right,
you wish the game was more Star Warsy?
I'm saying I wish the game was more Uncharted, I guess. I don't know. No, that's not what I mean. That's untrue. I don't like this because it's an AT-AT. I like it because it's a fucking sick idea for an intro to a level. This could have been a little guy climbing a horse or whatever, and I'd still have been as thrilled. I just think it's a creative way to open a level. The fact that it's a walker is relevant. I don't even know which of the ATTs, TTs, triple A's, whichever one of that it is. Which one is it?
Darth, what were you doing here?
I was playing chicken with it.
I didn't even think about doing that. I don't know. It was two things. Like, one, I didn't even think about doing that, and I'm glad that the game designers thought about you doing that and having the thing shoot at you, because that, like, I didn't even. That's the kind of. I will give them additional points for this. That's the kind of game design that I really like. I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3 right now, where it's like the closest you can actually get to like D&D in a computer game, where there is a lot of thought put into, well, what if they do this instead of this? And
which is exactly what I did at the beginning. I went the other direction upstream, and they had blocked it off, so I
the game is like, hey, there's a walker in front of you, and the characters are like, Cal, better be careful of those walkers, and Darth is like, I'm gonna turn around and walk the other way.
Well, what if? Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
It's great. Oh, you ignored his hint too? You were like, nah, I know I'm doing the wrong thing. BD1's like, hey, what the fuck are we up to? And you're like, nothing. I'm just getting my laps in, bro. Getting my reps. It's great. You kind of blast your way through, and we see a familiar face. Saw Gerrera is here, and so are his partisans. What did y'all think of Saw and his whole situation here?
The funniest thing is how he just like look at this. He like literally jumps on your windshield like while you're in the middle of a battle, and he just
who the hell
like
are you?
he just like bloops down right on your windshield, and it was like look he just
he's like, hey.
like I'm fighting, and all of a sudden there's a dude right in my windshield. I'm just like imagining driving in real life and that
turn on the
happening.
wipers, knock them off.
Yeah.
He's kind of I quite like. Look, I mean, this is kind of it's predetermined. The morality of all of this is predetermined, right? You should help free the Wookiees from the Empire because the Empire is a fascistic dictatorship that is enslaving them. So it's cool to kill stormtroopers. We all love to do that. I think what's interesting here is Grease kind of correctly anticipates that Saw might be using you a bit, and Cal's like, I don't care. Like I'm still helping and doing the right thing. And I like that Grease is a character who relentlessly is like, that's not what we're here to do, though. Like, we have a job to do, and this guy is trying to kind of divert us to get there to achieve his goal. And Cal is kind of like, no, but his goal is worthy and noble, and we should help him out. And I like that it's not played as, like, melodrama. It just kind of is a position they both have, and you move through it. I think it's some of the better writing in the story is when little moments like that get to happen.
See, I thought that was kind of flat because, like, Saw is... You introduce the character of Saw, who is, I want to say, infamously, notoriously, like, one of the grayest characters in the Rebels, in the Rebel Alliance or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
Rebellion.
he's an outsider who is very much on the... He's willing to do bad things for good reasons, etc.
Yeah.
And like that, like I didn't really understand that part where like Grease is objecting to what you're doing, and I'm just like, huh? What are you talking about? I don't. And then first of all, like him saying that, and so I was waiting for like that sort of put like a little thing in my mind of like, well, Saw is like gonna backstab us somehow or something like that, and it just never manifested.
Yeah, it's a kid's game at certain points, and this is one of those moments where it's a kid's game, right? Like, this isn't the Saw from Andor. This is how you would explain Saw to a 12-year-old. Where you're like, yeah, right. He's a rebel guy who does the right thing, but maybe he doesn't have your best interests at heart.
Counterpoint.
And like, yeah.
To it's a kid's game. My friend.
Well, in this moment, anyway.
Well, yeah. Well, for this brief moment, because my friend watching me playing this, she was just like, she's like, can you just run past the stormtroopers? And I was like, I mean, I could. And she's like, could you please? Because hearing them scream and cry for help and like, oh god, he's gonna kill me. It's like, it's brutal. And we were laughing because it's like, you know, am I the bad guy? Because like, this is just some guy who's like, you know, he's like on his day job. I'm just guarding this mine shaft, and this fucking Jedi comes in and like, oh no, he killed everybody. I knew it was gonna end badly.
I have so many recordings of it. Like, the funniest one that I've heard them say so far is, I got this, I can do it. Ah!
Listen, they are the comedic relief. They are the droids from Clone Wars. It's extremely funny. Anytime one of them has a bark. There was a really great one where I walked up to a dude and he's like, hey, freeze. And then I kept walking and he's like, you're not freezing. I said freeze. And then I kept going. And he's like, wait. And then I killed him. It's so good. This game really leans into some of that humor as it goes. I think it's really fun, but yeah. You are just like slaughtering people, but they're also stormtroopers. I mean, it's fine to kill stormtroopers in Star Wars. It's like an acknowledged thing that you're allowed to do in this era, right?
There was a really fascinating video essay that I watched where they were talking about the purpose of masks and how it dehumanizes the enemy so much, and that's one of the reasons that the stormtroopers all wore masks like that, so that you could see them being killed and it doesn't hurt. It doesn't like question the morality of the hero because you're just killing this faceless thing. You're not seeing like the face of a father or that kind of thing, which is just interesting.
My cousin thought they were the A New Hope stormtroopers were all robots, and for the longest time, and then that's one of the things about like the Force Awakens, like that opening scene with Finn, that like really, it's the JJ-ist of things where he like sort of steps into like a completely new area or thought and just doesn't explore it at all. Where
it's nothing to say
like,
about
oh my
it.
God, these are people. And like that was his best friend or something that like just got killed there or whatever, and it's a really traumatic moment for him, and then it just doesn't go anywhere. But
Yeah, I mean, at least Filoni's kind of like he explored. I mean, the Clone Wars is doing a lot of work with that around the clones and like that whole. But I, mean, I think ultimately, like Lucas just wasn't interested in that in the original stories.
no, which is fine because they that's their purpose. They're just minions in the original Star Wars, and that's totally fine.
Yes, I agree though. I think if you're going to introduce that, you got to have something to do or say about it. And then by the time they give it back to Abrams, he's like, what if there was a girl Finn? And they had the hots for each other, and they were both in the rebellion, and they were both ex. It's like, bro, what are you doing?
And it was secretly Lando's daughter or something.
Oh, is that true? Is that true?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it was
It
strong.
could be.
That's legit. That's her.
That's his daughter.
And this is something. So this is something I only just learned as I was finishing up writing my Wasted Character series. Do you know why Lando was on Pisana?
You texted us this a little bit ago. I'll let you.
What's Pisana?
That's the desert
It was
planet
the
with
desert
the carnival
planet.
party.
You need to situate that in this. Is that in the last film?
Yeah, the last one.
Okay, so just assume I don't remember anything from that. Is that where he links up with them?
Yeah,
It's
so
where
they have the
Chewie gets blown up, not blown up.
Oh yeah, okay.
And they're
they're in that little village or whatever.
Yes, and there's like this big party that they only do every 42 years because it's been 42 years since the original movie came out.
Oh.
I never made that connection. Wow.
Fuck. That film sucks. Sorry. What did you ask?
So apparently the reason, because we had speculated when we had spoke previously about why he was still there on the planet, because the story says that he was there helping Luke look for Ochi so they could find the dagger or whatever, and they never could, so Luke left, but Lando stayed, and you never know why. But then the backstory they wrote to explain it was that after Lando's daughter got kidnapped by the First Order, he got so depressed that he just kind of gave up on everything and just stayed on the desert planet. And I'm like, okay, so they wrote Luke to get depressed and give up on everything. They wrote Han to get depressed and give up on everything. They wrote Lando. It's like every male character of the story they wrote to get depressed and give up on life because they just could not figure out how to write these characters for the next generation. And that just like, it just like breaks my heart that these writers went that direction.
I mean, look, as a depressed man who periodically thinks about giving up on life, let me tell you, not a healthy impulse, and also not like an interesting. I've said this before about the sequel trilogy. They settle on every time they ask themselves a question, they settle on the first idea they have. Like everything is just first draft idea of everything, where it's like, okay, well, why is Luke in isolation? What if he was doing a school and it broke bad? Okay, cool, done, send it. Okay, we need Lando to be on this planet. What if he was there to do a thing and then he got sad and didn't leave? And like, it's always first impulse. There's no leverage to make it interesting and make it talk to interesting ideas. I don't know, like you I didn't realize that was a thing. I didn't even realize he had a daughter. And I watched that film. I saw that in theaters opening night, and I do not remember any of that shit. I don't remember anything about that film except the Chewbacca thing.
They only like barely hint at it in the film's dialogue. He's like the film ends and he's like, so what about your family? Where are you gonna go? And she's like, I don't know. I was taken from my family. And he's like, well, I'll help you find them. And then everyone after the fact was like, oh, is that supposed to be his daughter? And then the writers came out and they're like, yes, that's supposed to be his daughter. So
dumb. Yeah. Look, I mean, to circle back, so I think that's so stupid. Look, around being a kids game of Stormtroopers, this is how we got here. Yes, I agree with that like it can be pretty dark, but it's funny. It's like dark humor, right? I just don't know that Saw, like it is it's understated because they've got nothing to do with this plot thing with him and Grease, and like they just do nothing with it. I don't even think he's really in this story again from memory, so it is really just a cameo, I suppose.
Yeah, so it's just forced inclusion of a character, basically. Although I will say, I thought it was a cool moment when I think when he showed up, because I was like, hey, it's Saw Gerrera, and my friend watching me goes, who the hell's that? She's like, it's Forrest Whitaker. I'm like, it is Forrest Whitaker.
Let me tell you. Yeah.
So I don't know how common this is, but did you guys track that whenever you go back up to characters after you've had your dialogue, you could go back like 4 more times and have continual bits of dialogue, which I did.
Yeah,
maybe I need to go replay the first like whole level.
This is the first time that happens.
Was it? Okay.
This is the introduction to that as a concept. Is that what you're wearing?
That's a poncho right there, son.
Oh my god! Why are you wearing with the white undergarment? What is wrong with you? You look. What the fuck?
Yeah.
That's a weird look, man.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm judging. I apologize.
Oh, did you? All right, it's not here, but there's a part where I was trying to figure, like my friend and I were trying to figure it out, because like there's a part with like a door that's like slightly jammed open, and there's a bunch of fire behind it. I think it's right before you fight one of the no, it's right before you fight the second robot. And there's like people inside there.
Oh.
And I was like, I feel like we're supposed to like there was like a cry for help, possibly. And I was like, I feel like we're supposed to like get this open somehow.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Not yet. You'll come back, and they'll still be there.
Oh, okay.
Just left
like,
them on fire the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
I went because when I got lost and I had to go back there again, I looked and I didn't see anybody inside there. Interesting.
We're still burning.
It's so dumb. They'll transplant that exact. Like anyway, it'll come back later. It's in a slightly different part of Kashyyyk, but yeah, you do address that problem. They just transpose it somewhere else. It's weird. I mean, I guess the implication is like you can't save everybody. And also, the thing that we haven't really talked about yet is this game doesn't. Darth kind of hit the kind of touched on it there. This game doesn't have a lot of verbs with how you can interact with its story and world. This level introduces the verb of, hey, I can go back and have these conversations. I can expand on things. But your verbs are kill or run. Like those are like the two kind of things that Cal can do, and in some ways it's an action game, right? So that's where you get the puzzles and stuff like that. But there isn't like there's no question of that as the primary verb for Cal in interacting with this conflict. Like for example, if this were a Star Wars RPG, for example, like Knights of the Old Republic or something like that, it might be the case of like, oh well, I can maybe neutralize these stormtroopers without killing them, or I can go full dark side and lightning them to death or whatever. It's like a very specific mode of, I guess, conceiving of your actions in the story, where regardless of what you want to do, you're doing what Cal would do anyway. Like you're sort of just living his story. You're not really making choices, which is just the type of game it is. But I think is notable to what Darth figured out, which is you can have those extra conversations. I kind of wish the game told you that. It's pretty hard to miss because you go to board the ship and you get the prompts. But yeah, it's just noteworthy because I haven't said that yet. Especially with the animals and stuff. can't just like tame the animals or like become pals with them. You have to murder them. Cal kills a lot of wildlife in this level, by the way. Like, I assume that Kashyyyk is a rich and involved ecosystem. Fucking lightsaber. Get him all dead. Kill all them bugs and worms and rats and lizards and shit, man. He's out there doing it.
And speaking of interacting with the world, this was one of my favorite things.
Cutting grass? Oh, force pushing the grass. Okay.
Just the fact
I
that you
mean-
could do that. I went around trying to force push everything just to see the mechanics of how everything moved. I
Video
was
games are
really
great.
fascinated.
I like when you fight someone in grass that as you swing your lightsaber, you're chopping the grass and it like glows orange with embers and stuff. Those touches are so good.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, the next thing I have to talk about here is, yeah, so you play through this little rebellion sequence. We get the worst fucking speech of all time from Saw at the end. It's just flat. There's no ideology. He gets basically like you do a bunch of killing. You kill a bunch of guys. You have a little mini boss fight at the end. You have a few mini boss fights along the way. And Saw gets up and he's like, "We've won," and it's just the most generic Disney. This is one of my problems with Disney Star Wars for the most part is the ideology. They are stuck, and I blame Dave Filoni. They are stuck with this concept of. It's a phrase that gets used a lot, which is like, we have to keep hope alive. Hope still burns. We have to ignite the fuse of hope. We have to ignite we have to ignite the fire of hope or whatever. And like, that's just not ideology. That's nothing. And it's the thing that the sequel trilogy is completely staked on. It's here what Saw spouts as his kind of ideology. It's sort of like, it doesn't mean anything. There's no perspective. I think if you contrast that with the conversations that you see Luthen and Saw have in Andor, you can tell that like that story is thinking about what it would mean for different parts of the rebellion to have different ideas about what the correct thing to do is, and like what winning the day looks like. And that's obviously why Luthen is such an interesting character, is he is able to assume so many positions to get people to do what he wants them to do or what he thinks is the right thing. And then here with Saw, he just gives you just the generic like speech that you would get in the last film in that trilogy. And it's just a shame, especially given the other positions this story is putting its characters in, where it's sort of, they're thinking about the fact that they've cut themselves off from the Force, and Seer and Cal are trying to navigate through this war. And then Saw just says like, we've got to be good and we'd won, and that's good, yay. And everyone just kind of cheers, and then you go back to your ship, and you get your princesses in another castle. Do you guys have anything to say on Saw here other than disappointing, or did that work for you guys? And am I just being the guy that likes Andor too much? You know what I mean?
I don't think you can like Andor too much. First of all, Darth, you got some thoughts? I have a few.
I loved the scene of coming up that elevator when I finally found it, and you come up into the middle of the battle, and I just like immediately get sucker punched by the droid and fall down, and then I get immediately lit on fire, and I'm like, I'm glad this is story mode, because I just never would get past this otherwise.
That fight kicked my fucking ass. There's those flamethrower guys are, the second they touch me, I die. The second the fire touches me, I'm dead. So I'm just dancing around this arena. I'm doing all kinds of acrobatics and shit. That took me a good like 25 minutes to beat. It's good. I'm enjoying my suffering. Okay, we got to talk about this fucking bizarre choice. So,
So I had a thought, which was not so much on this. Like I completely agree. Like my friend and I, when we were watching this, it's like he finishes his speech, and I was just like, yay, we did it. And she's like, why aren't you knocked out yet? Because she wanted it to be over. But and then I got lost on Kashyyyk again. And then but no, I think you sort of tap into a thought on, or when you're talking about the ideology or whatever, where it's just like we gotta keep hope alive. Like For what? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm reminded of a line from The West Wing, where the guy's talking to, the advisor's talking to his like political candidate or whatever. And he's like, I know what we're against, but what are we for? Like,
Yeah.
I think that's like part of a lot of Star Wars doesn't really delve into that. It's just whatever we're doing is for good and democracy, which is good, allegedly, or at least that's the perspective that we have, being Americans or whatever. The I think that's where that's coming from, and why it's not really explored. It's like, this is the Empire, and we're fighting for the Republic, so therefore that means we're the good guys. But then they don't explore that very often, and when they do, I think it gets very interesting very quickly. With one of the best moments of Mandor season 2 was who's that comedian? Bill Burr, and they're driving along the thing, and he's like, look at these guys by the side of the road. You think they give a care who's in charge? They just want people to leave them alone. Empire, Republic, It's all the same to them.
Yep. Which is a shame that, I mean, you look at the way that Lucas reframes the concept of that with the prequels, and especially in in the Bush era that he's responding to by the time that second film wraps. He's starting to ask pretty interesting questions around, like, okay, but like, democracy only works if people believe in the process of democracy. And you have that pretty cringe-inducing but genuinely interesting kind of conflict that Anakin raises in the second of those films, where he's sort of talking about this idea of, like, but if democracy is all of these people squabbling with each other and reaching a gridlock, why isn't there a system to develop a resolution? And the simple answer to that is, like, America doesn't have one of those. Most other democracies do, like, because you don't have a prime minister, you have, because you kind of have the structure of having a president and the way that is kind of organized. There isn't a way that enforces people to get to resolutions. And so in some ways, I think Lucas is correctly identifying that when you interrogate those systems, the answer that a lot of people come to is, I don't know, for freedom or whatever. And you go, okay, but why? And, like, what do you mean by freedom? And in what context do you mean that? And they can't answer that because, as you said, they don't stand for anything. They just stand against stuff, which is what makes it very easy for, I think the prequel is, like, genuinely interesting in their exploration of politics. And yeah, Mando, it touches on some of it too, right?
Yeah, and that's, I think, a key point on that is, like, that's sort of the question on the exploration of Attack of the Clones. That's the Anakin and Padme sitting in a field meme. And but and it's an interesting question that he asks in the third movie, which is a different one, which is what do people do when they're afraid? And they want that, so they're willing to give up stuff. And it's like the Padme, one of the best lines of all of Star Wars is, like, here's how democracy dies, or something like that. Or no, she says liberty, I think. To thunderous applause.
Yeah. So this is how liberty dies, to thunderous applause. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, one of the best lines ever.
It's so good because
it's a great line.
I was there in 2016. It happened. Yeah. Like it. Oh yeah. Sorry. It just fucking Lucas, man. Say what you will, dude. Fucking read the room. He saw where it was going.
That could have been such an interesting story, and I don't know where it would have fit. But I love the idea that if a dictatorship is run in a better fashion, where you're not just outright abusing your citizens, the citizens will not care. Like you were just saying, they don't care if they're run by this person or run by this person, as long as their lives are not objectively worse off. They don't care what the higher ups are doing. So have the Empire just don't mistreat the citizens. The citizens won't want to rebel, and then the rebellion is trying to inspire people with hope and to live in a democracy, and then everyone in the galaxy is like, we don't care. Like, why do we care that we're in a democracy or not? It doesn't help me gather the wheat any faster. You know, so if the bad guys in charge just don't abuse people, then you never can have a rebellion because there won't be anything to rebel against.
So
It's just a whole.
there's two different things on that. The first one is that if you can provide stability and security to people, stability and security, that's what matters. Like if I can go to work and feed my family and not get killed, and if or no, there was a completely different thing that I saw on. Oh, I don't remember. This was some interview on NPR, I think, where it was essentially like, if people know the rules, and you clearly define like these are the rules of this society, you follow these rules and you get that stability and security, as long as you say Heil to the Overlord. And if you can if you say Heil to the Overlord and and you go to work and you're a good citizen, then you'll be fine and you'll take that. And even though like if you really think about it, you've given up like a lot of your freedom or expression or whatever. And then the other part of that is not just the you don't have to treat all your citizens well. There are different segments of the population that,
Yes.
as long as they are not on the bottom, they are okay with that. If somebody is worse off than them, then that's okay. It's a really dark thing, but yeah.
I mean, that's how it works, right? Like that's what you see throughout history with dictatorships, right? Is like they stratify class in order to either produce a self kind of identifying enemy, right? So you think about the ways in which dictatorships prey on minorities because they are minorities. It's a useful mechanism for a dictatorship in order to suppress a populace's concern, is going, hey, these are the bad guys and they should be treated poorly. And that's exactly what you're saying, Ryan, which is like, and therefore I have security because if we just get rid of them all, or if we lock them all up, or if we, whatever it is we do, the problem becomes, well, what happens when that isn't enough? Well, we need to come for someone else. And that's why like fundamentally dictatorships are not sustainable. And it's kind of why Star Wars is really interesting with the Sith as a concept as well, is like, eventually they'll come for you, right? Like, it doesn't matter how good you have it, it will run out eventually. And eventually, either in order to justify it, they'll have to go find another enemy, and so they'll start a war, or they'll come for you next at some point unless you do something. And what's kind of interesting is if you think about the lack of, the Sith is that rule of two, which is only a relatively recent rule as far as the Sith is concerned in Star Wars history. But the rule of two is like it's like a self-defeating mechanism. And in some ways, you've got to wonder to what extent Lucas thinks evil is self-defeating with that concept, right? Because it's like, eventually your Padawan, your learner, your number two, if you're a Sith, is gonna come for you. They're gonna at some point find their own apprentice, develop power, and try and kill you in order to become the one in charge. And it's that idea of like evil is kind of self-defeating, which is a very kind of 80s, 90s thing that was big in popular fiction in America in particular. I think after Reaganism and all that stuff, I think it was an interesting natural response. By the time you get to the second film being made, and Lucas is pretty clear in the text, pretty clear feelings about Afghanistan and Bush's response, and the ways in which he leveraged what happened. I think there's something interesting about the way that, like, the Empire, particularly when we see it in things like Andor, where you're kind of in the seminars where the CIA equivalent in Star Wars are making these decisions and trying to sustain the Empire. They're making similar choices to what you would make if you're in a democracy, but the cost is always human life, safety, or comfort, right? And it's like, instead of sacrificing other things like a clear path forward, or like the requirement to have discourse, you're sacrificing people as the resource with which you achieve your means. And it's, I don't know, like, I just think it's partly why it's one of the most interesting periods in Star Wars, is characters remember that it wasn't working before, but what they have now is significantly worse. And so the question is, like, what do you do? Like, how do you fix this? And of course, the sequel trilogy has no answer. They just do the Republic again. And the books are a lot more interested, granted. I've read a few of the, particularly the Leia book, Bloodline.
I was just about to say that, Bloodline delves into that. And I thought was like the most interesting thing of the sequel era, like the political part of that.
Well, and that book has this masterstroke where they're having the same issue where they're having like political gridlock because again they've just done democracy the exact same way as the Republic, instead of replicating a model that we know works in real life, right? Which is sort of how this thing happens. And that inevitably gives way to a fascist dictator again. I mean, look at America. That's literally seems to be the trajectory again. But what's kind of interesting is they have a character in that who is a young dude. He's kind of Leia's offsider, and he's on the other side. So he's effective. If Leia is if Leia is functionally like a democratic socialist, he is a conservative, and he's young enough that he wasn't around during the war, but he like collects Empire artifacts because he thinks that they're like interesting, and he thinks that like the Empire had a bunch of good ideas, and if only you could put those good ideas to work in a different system, like it'd be fine. Like the Empire was bad and the Emperor was evil. But what if you did all that stuff and you had a not evil person running it? Like surely that would work. And what the story gets at that is fascinating is Leia's kind of like, dude, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And he gets kind of coerced into almost like cosplaying as someone who agrees with the Empire, and by the end of that story, it genuinely challenges Leia to have a conversation with this dude. And it's the most interesting the sequel era is, I think. It's probably in that book, which is a fucking shame because those are really salient questions to the time we're in now. Imagine if Lucas had made those sequels, they would be about the rise of fascism in America and Trump and the result of like kind of resting on our laurels, you know, after Obama for 8 years. Like that would be the stuff he'd be exploring in the same way that that's what he was interested in when he made the prequels. And I guess when I say there's an absence of ideology in the sequels, that's what I mean. That was what I wanted to get to tease that.
I took some notes from back when I read Bloodline. I don't even know how old this is. It's got to be several years now. But thankfully, Google Docs saves everything. So there's two quotes. Is if the galaxy truly could have been united under a wise authoritarian leader, such an empire might have stood for 1,000 years to rival the old republic itself. His name's Ransom Casterfo.
Yes,
and he said,
Ransom, it's such a good name.
And then my favorite quote, it was one of those things where like I saw it, I'm like, I've got to write this down because this quote is just awesome, and it's just it's awesome and it's very real. Like that you would have this sort of attitude from people in the time following a system like that, or somebody that wasn't there or was only on the periphery or whatever. But like that quote is, the only problem was that we had the wrong emperor.
Yes.
And it's so good, like that part. Where the hell are we?
Okay, yeah. Yes. Okay, so look, our princess is in another castle. Okay, we finish the level, and the game pulls a lazy like, yeah, Tarful in here. And Sia's like, that's fine. We'll just go back to Zepho and see what's up with the tomb. Very weird choice to make. It's a really artificial way to make you go back to Zepho to communicate to you mentally that you'll be coming back to Kashyyyk at some point to meet Tarful. It's just needed a second pass of how they structured that, but whatever.
All right, you want part two?
Yeah, let's do part two. This season of Daredevil in the Details is brought to you by the Maynard Trigg series. These are my Dying Earth science fantasy steampunk coming of age novels. The third book is out now. You can grab the first book, Maynard Trigg and the Creature Beneath the Veil, hardback or paperback. It's on special right now at underink.press. Appreciate any support you guys give. These books are one of my favorite things I've ever done. I'm super proud of them, and I would love you guys to check it out. If you're interested in the stuff we do, I guarantee you'll enjoy these books. Head to underink.press and grab your copy today. If you wouldn't mind, Rye. Almost called you Darth because I'm looking at Darth.
Among the crash site of an Imperial cruiser. Among the crash site of an Imperial cruiser?
Among the crash site of an Imperial cruiser.
Amidst the crash site of an Imperial cruiser, Cal is confronted by the second sister. During their melee, she reveals... Oh, this is like way into Zepho. Cal is confronted by the second sister. During their melee, she reveals that she is in fact Trilla, Cere's old apprentice. Trilla tells you that Cere left her behind to be taken by the Empire. Cal solves another complicated old tomb while Cere pitches her ideology via radio. This amounts to an
Trilla. I fucked that up.
Oh, yeah, Trilla. The second sister. This amounts to an uncomplicated doctrine: the Jedi were bad and power is good. After another long sequence of tomb, Cal remembers Force Pull and eventually finds another hologram from Cordova. On the way back to the Mantis, Cal is confronted by Ba Gonk and zapped unconscious. He awakes in a cell with no weapon and no droid.
Look, the summary skips everything before you reach the second sister because there's no plot happening before then. Like,
it's all
it's cool.
puzzle, yeah.
Yeah, and like it's really cool. And like, don't get me wrong, crawling through like this crash site of this Imperial cruiser is sick as shit. Like the visuals and like I very much felt like Rey and the Force comes back. Force Awakens. I very much felt like Rey in that moment. In my head, I was like, it's a synonym for returning, isn't it? The Force is back.
The Force strikes back.
Star Wars Episode 7, The Force comes back.
Working title.
Working, yeah. TM. Now, okay. Do you guys have anything you want to talk about before we get to the Trilla stuff? Because that's really the meat and potatoes of what's going on here.
I think the puzzle that I got really stuck on was after Trilla. Because is it releasing, like burning the chain and releasing the ball from above, that's after Trilla, right?
Yeah, that's when she's on the headset talking to you.
So, when she was talking to me and we're behind well, first of all, I want to say, even in story mode, I got my ass kicked in that fight. I don't know how you do it like not in story mode, because I was just doing the thing where I'm hitting A and I'm just jumping, and I'm just like, and jump and jump and jump and jump and jump, just like twirling around the room while she's like charging at me and stuff. And my friend, I had several people watching me at this point, and they're like, do force pull, slow her down, like hit her with the force push. Like nothing. I'm like, nothing's working.
You gotta.
I can't do anything.
The key mechanic that you're not engaging with is the parry system. So that L1
I couldn't
button,
parry her either.
I
just suck at the combat.
Okay.
I'm too old. I
get
don't.
it.
Maybe I'm too old for this, but like I remember I was in one of the people I was talking with. I was comparing it with like Shadow of War and their combat system, and like that just worked so much better than this. Maybe because it's not parry based.
Yeah, it's counter based.
I think it's
look,
like all combos and tricks and stuff, which is really not what this is.
This is a specific subgenre of like action game. Yeah, which
is
I
like
mean, it's
base level Assassin's Creed, which was trash.
Yeah, this is Dark Souls, is what it is, and like unless that's something that you're familiar with or good at or know how to engage with,
it is what he's doing right now. This is exactly what I was doing. Just running away.
Okay. We had very different experiences. I was standing still and parrying everything, and then when she did the red dodge, I dodged backwards and hit her. Like I was stationary for the whole fight, more or less.
Yep. See, that's exactly how it went down for me. You run around and then she smacks the shit out of you.
I'm glad that the game part of this is the worst experience for you guys, because that's very funny to me. I kind of assumed it would be, but it's very funny.
And then when we get eventually pushed through the gate or whatever, right here, and I was like, immediately I was like, oh, she's the Padawan.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious, right? Before she even says it.
Yeah.
She's the only other named character you've heard of.
So what do y'all think about that idea? Because it feels so cliche to me to have the Padawan of your current quote-unquote master is the bad guy all along. Like, the odds of you ever actually meeting this person in a huge galaxy, and then the odds of that person being the old Padawan of your current master. Just like it just felt so cliche. I just wish they had done something different.
Yeah. I mean, it is the most Star Wars shit of all time. Like, that
It's the
your
smallest
fallen
galaxy
Padawan.
in the universe.
Smallest galaxy, yeah, exactly. It's all about the Skywalkers, etc., and so forth. I think it's bad, but I think it does make sense in this story. Only that the reason that Seer saves Cal in the first place is that she's trying to track down Trilla to stop Trilla from getting the holocron. And so the reason that you meet Seer is because you're in proximity to the second sister, and the reason that happens is because you use the Force to save your boy. Like, it is cause and effect. It just isn't well communicated or well structured, and is, yeah, I think it's cliche and trite.
I want to raise the question that Darth likes the most, which it was unclear. I was kind of getting it, but it was unclear to me. I was tired and I was confused at this point, and I was just fucking done. So like when she started talking, I was like, oh, she's the second sister, and like obviously. I need to go back and watch that again to like figure out what the hell she said, because I don't really remember it. And this was last night, by the way, that I did this, and I was very confused as to what her motivations were. Like, what does she want? What is her why? Like, clearly she feels some sort of betrayal from Seer, and then she was saying something about Seer had broken or whatever, and it was unclear to me what events transpired and what everybody wants. And I mean, well, I understand what we want and what Seer wants, as far as like what we've been told, but like what this lady wants, I don't get it. Like, what is her deal?
I don't think we ever solved that with Riva either. So, like, all of these Inquisitors, at least from the stories that were given, they were all once Jedi Padawans who were just, like, indoctrinated over the years by the dark side users, by maybe Vader directly. And that just means they have, like, no longer have free will, and they no longer care about anything because they're just, like, evil now, and that's the way it is. And that's as far as the story wants to take it. But you're right, because that makes little sense. You're like, what do they want? They didn't grow up evil. They grew up with the good guys. Do they just, like, they don't remember that anymore?
Well,
or...
Riva's was just dumb, first of all. That's just it. Like, I think we did a bunch of talking and thinking about that, but at the end of the day, it's just dumb, and very forced. But like this. I was thinking, like, you know, if she was the Padawan and if Seer had sold her out, then it would track to me that, you know, she hated Seer and wanted her dead and was like, well, I'm, you know, gonna survive and I'm gonna go with these dark side guys because they're not going to kill me, or they didn't kill me, and this lady sold me out, so I'm now on Team Bad because, or rather, I'm now on the team that I don't perceive to be as Team Bad. Now the Jedi are evil because she sold me out or whatever. So, and I don't want her to get any more kids, etc. But like,
let me
was that is that the gist of what her position, or
it just makes so little.
I have here what she says if you want it.
So what it was that the apprentice was watching the other younglings. She was like the oldest one, and Seer was off doing her own thing. She was like the master trying to do master stuff, while the eldest Padawan was watching the younger Padawans, right? And then they were like off in hiding, and then Seer is captured and she is tortured and gives up the location. And then that gets the Padawan and then all of her younglings that she was protecting, gets them all captured and or killed and or indoctrinated to become Inquisitors. So after that, the Padawan hates her old master because she's sold her out, which I don't understand the motivation unless you're just so brainwashed that you can't think for yourself anymore. Because, like, she didn't sell her out. Like, you can be tortured to the point where you will say anything to get it to stop, and it's not her fault. You know, she didn't sell you out for money. It's like they.
I disagree to a point. I find it completely plausible that somebody in that position would be angry about that. But
there's one crucial bit that you guys are missing. So, I'll just give you the exchange. There's like 5 lines of dialogue. So Cal turns away and he says, "I won't let you manipulate me." Trilla.
So sure are you? When faced with a choice to protect herself or her Padawan, she chose self-interest. She'll sell you out too.
Well, I can handle myself.
Can you afford to take that chance? Your new master harbors great darkness. The look on her face when she saw what they had done to me, as I am now. She turned, exposing her true nature. She used the dark side.
She cut herself off from the Force.
Oh? How long before she cracks and betrays you too? Is that who you want beside you when you find the holocron? What would Jaro Tapal say?
You have no right to mention his name.
I wonder, what would he think if he could see his Padawan now, skulking in the shadows with a betrayer, granting her access to a legion of impressionable students?
No, I won't let anyone touch them.
I thought the same thing once.
And then she goes on to sort of say, how long before she cracks and betrays you too? Is that who you want beside you when you find the holocron? What would Jaro Tapal say? So it is exactly the motivation that you were hinting at before, which is she doesn't want... It's ironic given that she's now evil, but she doesn't want Seer to have it because she knows what darkness Seer is capable of. And how she treated her as a Padawan.
okay, so yeah,
I said this earlier, but that was the point where I stopped believing anything that she said, because like we said, you know, the villains will frequently lie to you, and saying this person used the dark side, you can't trust them anymore, without us having seen any evidence of that so far. I don't know if there's a better way to like deliver that bit of the story to make it, because like I did not believe that for a second. Like
See,
there was
a very similar part or situation that people talk about a lot is when they talk about Kylo talking to Rey about what Luke did. And a lot of times I see people describe that as Kylo lying to her. And I like to jump into those conversations and go, he's not lying to her. That is his truth. Like, from his point of view, that is what happened. Like, and that tracks. Like, he wakes up in the middle of the night and Luke's standing over him with like a lit lightsaber. And he comes to the wrong conclusion. It's a misunderstanding, which is why it's a very weak plot point or weak conflict. But from his point of view, that is what happened. Luke came to kill him. It's true for him. So I read this along of very much the same way. It might not be right or accurate, or I don't think she's lying. It's her truth. It's her point of view and perspective on what occurred.
She even says later, she said on the headset, she says, "I am what Seer made me." And she kind of basically like goes on to be like, you know, you and Seer doing this have led the Empire to all of these artifacts. Like, the Empire would never have been on this planet if it weren't for you two. Like, she sort of, her truth is that Seer doing this is actively harming people and is actively a bad thing to be doing, which from our perspective is untrue. So yeah, I think that's exactly right. She's not lying, but I'm with Darth. The second that she gives that monologue, you have to go, okay, you're not a trustworthy narrator, because that's not how I see it.
I wonder if they're also tying that in with the Obi-Wan show, because I'm pretty sure when Anakin gets his like face mask broken open, and Obi-Wan is like, "What happened to you?" and Anakin says something along the lines of, "I am what you made me." Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
Well, that's Obi-Wan really did literally chop him in half.
In a very literal sense, yes.
It just seems like too coincidental for them to have that same thing in this story, and it's like that's now a theme that they're going with is the failure of the master is the fault of the apprentice, and we're gonna really shove that theme at the audience.
Well,
The failure of the master
is the fault of the apprentice. No,
Okay.
it's more that like
Take the meaning and not the words.
fall of
I
the-
probably said that.
The failure of the master is
the failure of other way around. The
something
failure
of
of
The failure of the
apprentice.
apprentice is not the
is not
yeah,
the
is
fault
the-
of the master.
take
Or
take
is
the
the
meaning
fault
and
of
not
the
the
master.
words.
Okay.
But
okay.
is, but hang on, yeah, because yeah. So like, if you think about Anakin, he is failed by every one of the Jedi Order. I mean, especially I always think about in Revenge that scene with Yoda where he finally goes to Yoda for counsel, and Yoda talks straight past him, where Anakin is like, I just need some. I'm struggling. Like I don't know what to do. I feel all of these ways, and he's like, feeling's the path to the dark side. And in that moment, he needed someone to be like, hey, we've all been there, man. Like it's cool. We all struggle with this stuff, and just Yoda can't be there like that for him because Yoda sees him as purely symbolic, right? He is a tool in the toolbox. He's the chosen one. He's not a person. And I think the way that Trilla schematically, and Obi-Wan in the moments in that film where he needed to say to the other people in the Jedi Order, him and Mace and Yoda are getting into a transport, and they have an exchange, and they're sort of Samuel Jackson's character is like, I don't know, man, like there's something going on with that kid, and instead of going, he's my homie, he's like a brother to me, like don't worry about it, he goes, well, he's supposed to be the chosen one. And it's heartbreaking because even in that moment, Obi-Wan can't bring himself to treat Anakin as his adopted son, his brother, because he's talking to the Jedi who are against attachment, and so he has to lean back on this whole prophecy thing. And I think this schematically is reaching for similar ideas without any of that layering and possibility that exists with Obi-Wan and Anakin that they get to then leverage in that scene in Obi-Wan, right? Like it's all of the aesthetics of that same thing without any of the specifics of their context being relevant, if that makes sense. So it's like if you described that to someone else, right? What I just said, if you described that to someone else and their takeaway was, okay, so you have a Jedi Master who doesn't always do the right thing, and that failure means that their apprentice is going to fall to the dark side and blame their master, which is a complete oversimplification, and it's why it feels like a cliche to what Darth was pointing out before. Whereas I think the more I think about the Obi-Wan Anakin relationship, the less that feels like a cliche. And the more it feels, and I do a lot of work for Star Wars to make that work for me because I'm interested in thinking about that stuff. But I think there's a lot more there just textually. Whereas this is just 3 hours in, the generic, yeah, my master left us behind and I got kidnapped and she used the dark side and now she wants to find these other kids and that's bad. And like the truth that Trilla, I assume, will have to admit to herself is she has to forgive Seer for this and accept that her master was fallible and like could make mistakes and like was just trying her best, and that maybe the force isn't as like black and white as the dark side and the light side, and maybe you can transgress and return to being a goodie. Maybe there is a path of redemption, and if there's a path of redemption for Seer, maybe there's a path of redemption for Trilla. And I think that's what this story wants to do, and I do not remember if it sticks any of that, or if it just ends up being bland and generic. But I think that is what they're going for. So
That's a good summary there.
thank you. That was completely off the top of the dome, so let's pretend that we can pretend that was written. Yeah, look, we get this reveal, and then, yeah, as we said, on the way back to the ship to talk to Seer about it, Cal gets knocked out. By a character called Bagonk. It's a droid, Bagonk. I love Star Wars, actually.
That's
this
not
shit
a droid.
rules.
It's not a droid. Is
it a dude?
Yeah, it's a dude. It's a what do you call it? It's like a bounty hunter.
Oh, yeah.
His,
But it's a droid. Oh, no, is it a dude?
I'm pretty sure it's a dude.
It's a bounty hunting droid.
Is it?
Bargonk was a droid that served the Haxion Brood crime syndicate as a bounty hunter during the reign of the Galactic Empire. It had white and blue... I'm not reading the description. But yeah, it says it's a Haxion Brood bounty droid. Is its product line?
So one interesting tidbit that I know we had talked about before, but there is so much of this like ancient cool art and these like hieroglyphics and like all of this really cool stuff. I spent a lot of time just like looking at all of this and just thinking about like what the history that's represented here is just so fascinating, and yet all that history is used for is as a backdrop. For the puzzles that are somehow the main focus of it, instead of like the history somehow being important to what's going on. Like, I think restructuring the entire thing to make it not about the kids and not finding a map to these kids, but about rediscovering the history of the Jedi and how that history could help them move forward now that the entire order has been decimated. Like, that idea, I think, fits much better with all of these ancient temple sites and everything that's going on. I think that would have flowed so much better.
I have good news for you. They made that game. It's called the sequel to this game.
Awesome. Okay.
It fucking rules. Every time that you guys are like, man, it'd be great if this game did this, or I hate it when it does. It's like they clean up so much of that, and a second game whips ass. But you have to do the work of the first game to understand why it works the way. Anyway,
well, what was the
I don't wanna
problem
spoil
with the
anything,
second
just
game?
saying.
Was the second game woke or something? Because I heard a lot of people complain about it, whereas the first one, a lot of people liked it.
I don't know. I don't really know what the I mean, it was kind of buggy when it launched. That might have been it. I don't know. Was it? I don't think it was woke. I don't remember.
I don't remember. I don't.
Yeah. I mean, also, wokeness isn't real. So
Oh,
it's
I
kinda
hate those.
irrelevant,
I hate
but-
those things so much.
Which ones?
Like, like when I got force push, I just blast those things off into nothing.
Oh, those,
Oh,
those
dude, they
little,
suck. The
yeah,
postural thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
They suck. Yeah. Dumb thing to put in your video game.
Oh, the worst one is when there's a small room with a meditation thing, and there's one of those things like right in front of the door. And so like when you respawn, you're gonna lose like a third of your health. Just getting out of the respawn room. That pissed me off so much.
Yeah, there's some
Have
real
you-
questionable choices.
Have you found that you could force push them? Because that was eye-opening for me.
Well, I didn't have force push at that point. I'm
Before you
saying now
got
that
it.
I have force push, I just blast them off all over the place.
This was another bit like the I don't know if I want to say the mechanics, but the way that they have all of this ancient stuff, and like there's this whole ancient magnet thing going on for some reason, and it's like you never explore the meaning of it or the purpose of it or
Yeah, hey,
why the
why is
old
this
Jedi
here?
would have done this. Yeah.
Why is this shit here? And like, what? You expect me to believe that Cordova, an old dude, did all this shit? He's like 70.
Do you remember? Did you guys see Galaxy Quest? One of the best movies ever made.
Oh
Yeah.
yes. By crap.
Yeah. So do you know the part where he goes there, like the kid is guiding them through like the bowels of the ship. He's like, all right, so turn right, and then it's straight on through the choppers, and they get the pistons that are just smacking together, and they're like, what is the purpose of this room? Like it's kind of like that. It's like, why is that there? What is this? What is this?
Yeah. This game is full of that stuff. I mean, you talk about verisimilitude. What are they eating when they live down here? Like, there's so many questions I have about.
Well, I mean,
this
I think that
stuff.
there's a lot of wildlife, there's a lot of greenery. I think that one's a bit easier, but it's just, why did they build this thing? Why did
Because
they
needed
build?
a level.
Why did they?
Level.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would make sense if it was like a tomb, and you.
Well, they're
wanted
all
to make
supposed to be tombs, I guess.
Are they tombs? They are tombs, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think it would
Yeah,
make
you
sense.
you see like the bodies at one point.
As a tomb, it kind of makes sense because it's like, there's a bunch of. But I mean, as a tomb, it would make sense if they were traps, not puzzles to solve to progress.
Yeah. If you bury me and you put fucking magnets in my tomb, I'm gonna come back and haunt the shit out of you. If you have to go through an Indiana Jones style gauntlet to get to my tomb, I'm gonna be pissed. It's just a
part-
lot.
This part,
Oh,
y'all.
this part was I died like 20 times here.
Yeah. I knew the
this
jump.
jump.
I understood what to do, but I'm like, I don't know how to do it. It was so frustrating.
Like,
I love how reliant this game is on video game language, and you guys are like, video games, never heard of her.
no, well, no, not that, but like, so if you go up to like, you go up to the very top here, there's like a branch hanging above you, and then like you hit it when you jump. So I'm like, well, I go lower, or then I go lower, and it doesn't. I don't have the altitude to get. Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
And my friends watching me, and they're like, well, do this, do this. I'm like, I'm fucking doing it. Shut up.
The gamer rage is real.
Oh,
I love
yeah,
it.
it was, but not.
Yeah, that's some bullshit
Darth,
in
do you
there.
have the part with where was it? It's the room with all the water where you drop the big thing with the chain. You know, there's like vines up
yeah.
above there that you can like force pull to yourself.
I was worried that you guys might not be able to solve that. Like, I was worried I was going to get a message being like, I am hard locked on this puzzle.
The funny thing was, the first time through, I figured out you were supposed to throw the lanterns across, get them caught in the beam, and have them over there. And then, oh wait, there you are. And then after that, I took the entirely wrong bit away from it and did something completely opposite with the lanterns than I was supposed to do. But anyway, yeah.
I
that
wish
room-
I wish it had communicated that you need force pull to do it. Like, just in some way to be like, hey, this puzzle isn't ready for you yet.
Well, this part right here, when you go through that blast door, I figured out in like 10 seconds. I was like, I need force pull for this, and I don't have it.
Yeah.
And then I left. But like, where was it? But yeah, there's a part in that room with like where you force pull like the lanterns there, in the room with all the water. There's like some vines up above you, and you have to run through like a significant amount of the level to get up there, and then force pull the vines to yourself, and then swing on. You have to swing to like another vine, and then swing back and forth, and then jump onto a ledge. And I did, and so we spent like, when I say we, I mean me and the people watching me, spent like 15 minutes trying to do that and failing, and then we finally got up there, and I'm like, what's the point of being up here? There is no point of being up here. We were already here. And we're like, why are those vines there? I don't get it. And then is when we realized that, oh, we have to burn the stuff that's around the chain. It was like, oh, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Yep. It's not good. I've done that puzzle maybe 8 times. I have to Google it every time. Like,
That I won't lie, that is what happened. My friend Googled it. She's like, what the hell are we supposed to do in this room?
If you have you're in a really fortunate position, right? If you get stuck on a puzzle and someone else can Google it and tell you the answer without you having to look at the problem with this fucking video game is you'll be like, how do I solve this puzzle? And someone will be like, in the mission before Cal gets killed, you'll find this and you're like, why is there a spoiler in front of the advice?
Oh yeah, so right here, so you run up here, and then you get onto a ledge. No, this is the
Yeah, you go at the top and it loops around.
Yeah. So, what was the other thing that happened? I'm trying to remember what
So
it was.
the entire reason I recorded this was just I was cracking up at the animation of this thing when he dies, because his head just is going back and forth, and he's like, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have attacked that dude."
No. It's great.
Yeah, but back in that room, there are like lanterns that pop up here, and you could carry them up the stairs. And then I tried doing that for a long time, trying to figure out what you're supposed to do with the lanterns up the stairs, and I don't think I ever found a reason for it.
You're supposed to burn vines away.
Oh, is that
do
what
that?
those are for?
Yeah.
Because I took them from the other side of the room.
You don't have to do that, but that is what they're there for. So it'll where we go next, you'll need to do similar stuff. Just remember that if there's like weird vines or growths or whatever, and there's stuff that looks like it could burn it, that's the mechanic.
Oh, okay.
It'll come up next episode, and then particularly the episode after that when we get to
That side room
place.
probably took, I don't know how long. It was that side room, and so all of it is like for like a Force Echo, which I think is like a health upgrade or something. But like, it was probably 15, 20 minutes. I was in that side room, and again, people talking at me like, "Well, try this or try that." Or it was, I think it was one of them that, you know how like you force pull. Okay, so yeah, you did this.
Oh, what?
Well, why would you go back in that room?
What the fuck?
And then you walk onto the water and it goes away.
Yeah. Darth is on another one. I don't know what the fuck he's doing. Jesus. Yeah. Look, it's not great. Look, we have to wrap up because I've got a hard out in about 5 minutes. Any closing? Okay, obviously you guys not thrilled with the gameplay so far. It's kind of what I was expecting. At least we managed to have some interesting conversations about the story and what it maybe isn't doing. Do you guys have any closing thoughts before I set up what we're covering for next episode? Anything you want to cover?
I hate it, but it's as far as the story goes, it's starting that introduction of the second sister as the lost Padawan, I thought has made it more interesting.
I've been entertained by it.
Yeah.
Even
Insert
aside
the
from
Monica
that.
from Friends meme. It just got interesting.
If you do get stuck, because not next recording, but at a certain point, there's gonna be a bunch of bosses and stuff. If you guys get stuck, message me, because you do also have the option. I can send you like, people playing the game that you could watch if you do get literally hard locked by just your physical ability to do it. So that is a backup plan I have if we need it.
Well, I'm in story mode, so God help us.
Yeah,
Guy,
that's why when you get knocked out at the end of this, I felt like such a loser. I'm like, this is literally the easiest I could play the game on, and I just got defeated. It wasn't even a boss.
So you're talking about like with Bagonk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I wish I had recorded this, or at least recorded the audio, because when again it was like there's like 3 or 4 people watching me, and they're all waiting for me to be done with this so that we can play something else. And it was the whole, are you knocked out yet? Have you been knocked out yet? And so we get to the part with like Bagonk and I'm fighting him, and somebody goes, maybe he'll knock you out. And then he knocked me out, and everybody's like, yay!
I love that you have an audience. This is great. You've got a little posse watching you.
Yeah, it's good times.
It's good stuff. Yeah. All right, so next time we are covering Chapter 4 of a game. The stopping point here is play until you catch a ride from an unusual friend, and you get back to the Mantis with a new destination. So basically just the planet that you wake up on is going to be the sequence we play through. And then we'll get into the Mantis, and then we're kind of like looking toward the middle build of the story, and then the big kind of finale. I'm fucking stoked for you guys to see where this ends up going. I think it does some really interesting stuff. And there's a set piece later on that I think might be one of Darth's favorite things in Star Wars. Just gonna call it now.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think that's all she wrote. Yeah, so until you till you finish the planet, get back to the ship. That's the section we're playing next time. Do you guys have any pluggables? What you got?
What'd you say? Play until you catch a ride from an unusual friend and return to the ship with a new destination. Okay.
Yeah, you'll get when you
those-
get back to the Mantis.
For those of you playing the at-home game.
Yes. Yes.
There's part of me that's like, it's Star Wars. Every person I meet is an unusual friend.
You'll know what the fuck I'm talking about. Okay. It's
You had a new book drop?
wild.
Was that right?
Wait, what?
You have a new book out?
I got 3 new books out. I only got 2 of them with me. What have I got? I give up to 3, obviously. Me and Darth did our big podcast, and this is the book that came of it. It is a historical analysis of Sherlock's Lost Episode. The artwork that Crystal did for this is like, this is such a good looking book, and it's hardback. Oh, it's so nice. It's basically like a historical analysis of why a bunch of fans thought there was a secret final episode to BBC Sherlock, and it's really a lesson in like empathy and relating to media. So if that sounds interesting, it's very light reading despite its topic. Definitely check it out. If nothing else, it's a fucking sick coffee table book to look at. That came out a couple months ago, and then my new book is Power Runner, which is a collection of essays, incidentally, about video games, sort of. They're essays about world building, CRPGs, love loss, and many other kinds of literary vulnerability. It's basically a bunch of essays I wrote across lockdown and then the subsequent years after that. And it kind of explores, I guess, the changes that happened to the way that I viewed the world, and then kind of the fallout of a pretty big breakup I went through and how that changed the stuff I write about, and why I'm the person I am now. So if you're interested in video games, or you just like to think about the ways in which who we are and the things we're going through change the way we experience media, Power Runner. All that's at underink.press if you want to go find that. And book 3 of Maynard Trigg is also out, exclusively early access on underink.press. So you can go find that as well, Maynard Trigg and the Vanishing Empire. But all that is at underink.press. I've been busy this year, boys. Been doing nothing but writing. So
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Go check them out. Darth, what you got to plug, boy? What you got?
I was not intending to do this, but I decided to finish up the Wasted Character series, covering Luke and Leia and a bunch of other people that I've not done. Okay. So I've got a full more 22 pages of script that is ready to go, and then I'm gonna tack on to the end of that the Kylo and Finn and Rey essays. So it's just one massive 5-hour video covering all the wasted characters in the sequels. So there's a bunch of really cool stuff that, I mean, it's cool but depressing, like the bit about Lando that I learned. And there's other little bits in there that are exciting, despite the fact that the topic is rather depressing. So, yeah.
Very on brand for us. I would have thought. Rye, what have you got going on? You got anything happening?
I'm working on a bunch of different stuff. None of it is anywhere close to being available for listening or viewing, etc.
That, you know what? That is what it is.
Unfortunately, I'm very much into right now all of the AI stuff, and especially the live action video converted to the potentials of movie making with basically you take or essentially if I had me walking across the room and picking up a book and then taking that and then running it through AI stuff to make me in a space station walking across there or something like that, and it's very complicated, very interesting future in that area.
Yeah, especially with animation.
Yeah.
Really cool stuff where you don't have to animate by hand. You could just film it live action, cartoonize it, and then go.
Yeah. The hard part right now is keeping it consistent, frame by frame. But there's people out there doing that stuff, which is awesome.
Okay. Keep your eyes out for Rye's Star Wars fan fiction.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
Set in my the hunt for the red dreadnought. That's gonna happen.
Listen, I would write the screenplay if you. I'm not against it. I'd love to work on something like that. All right, we gotta wrap it up. I gotta go.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching or listening. You guys know how it works. Go find everything we do at zeroindent.com, and you can go grab all of the fun stuff that we do over at underink.press. Hopefully, by the time this comes out, I've nearly finished it. There will be there'll be a Bigger Fish shirt over at underink.press. I haven't sent you guys the design that I've settled on, but it's pretty cool. I think you'll be into it if you like the stuff we talk about. And it's one of those shirts that it could be anything, but if you know what it means, then you know it's nerdy. So it's that nice fine line. Thanks for watching or listening. We will catch you next time to cover Chapter 4 of Jedi Fallen Order. What do they say in Star Wars and stuff, guys? But
now you die.
Now you die. May the Force be with you always.
There you go.
There you go. All right, we'll catch you guys later.